everybody, and welcome to another exciting installment of the Arcane Archive presents MetaTalks. You are, of course, joined today by your illustrious, enigmatic hosts. My name is Adam.
My name is Sam.
And we're going to take you on another fun little ride of our incessant, inane, constant rambling and powwowing and just ranting at the end of the day about today's specific topic that me and Sam have, obviously at this point, I'm sure you know, strong feelings about. Sam, we go ahead and tell them what today's topic is that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about feats.
We're going to be talking about
my favorite optional rule.
Feats. Such a popular, well-known, not at all controversial aspect of the game in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, I don't know. Controversial is a very strong word. I
feel like it's accurate. Yeah, that's why I used it, because I think it's accurate.
I feel like most people I've met who play this game don't even realize that feats are an optional rule and assume that they are viable. So always ask your DM. But if you're me, you never ask and you just do it anyway.
I mean, well, it's the thing, right? Like, I don't know. Like, that's my point being exactly right there. That is some of the controversy, right? Where it's like, obviously, feats are optional, but at the same time, it's like they're also very cool. And I've never been in a game where feats weren't allowed.
I had one where they were limited. It was like a set of one shots that I did where it was like you can only take racial feats. Was an interesting, like, you get them for free every so often, but there was no like bonus feats aside from that, which I thought, but yeah, I think most people look at it and it's so ingrained in like, D&D Beyond and other D&D like online play apps that it's almost like, well, it's an option, but it's right here in front of me. Like I can just do that, and people don't realize it's not a hard set rule for every table.
Well, I mean, again, to be fair, there's almost nothing in D&D 5e that's like a hard set rule. Again, to be
true.
And that is kind of where some of the controversy comes into play. So let's just go ahead and talk about it. Let's get into it a bit. First off, we're gonna go ahead and just kind of explain to anybody here who again might not be as familiar with feats and exactly what they are and what they're really meant to be as intended. So first off, feats obviously is short for feature. It's basically a feature, an aspect, an ability that a character, a creature, a player, whatever, can acquire after essentially just in game terms, basically accomplishing like a particular amount of like training or a particularly like notable like accomplishment. They can be used as boons, special bonuses and stuff that you get from like either deities or just particularly powerful creatures or things like that they can bestow upon you. The overall concept and idea is that you have basically been either blessed, trained, or done something else for a while to essentially accrue this type of skill and ability for that creature or your character to now have this cool thing, right?
Yeah. From a mechanical standpoint, I'm just gonna go over quickly how it's integrated. As you already said, a feat represents a talent or an area of expertise that gives a character special capabilities. It embodies training, experience, and abilities beyond what a class provides. At certain levels, your class gives you the ability score improvement feature. Using the optional feats rule, you can forgo taking that feature to take a feat of your choice instead. You can take each feat only once unless the feat's description says otherwise. Kind of touching on what you said, a lot of people think, oh, well, I can just take whatever I want. You can make a story beat, have some fun with it. But it essentially gives you the option of replacing your ability score increase with a feat. But they're more fun.
Well, sometimes. Again, obviously it depends because, once again, you are one thing that I also do want to kind of like ingrain and kind of and explain is that feats are also not necessarily just tied to ability score improvement, like milestones in your character. You know what I mean? So for that matter, also, to be fair, neither are attribute improvements. Like there are actually many other ways to increase either attribute or even obtain feats besides just the usual. Like obviously doing it at those levels is just, that's the easiest kind of mainline way of keeping track of that, of course. And it will require obviously a little bit more conversation, interaction with your DM to be like, hey, is there some way that I can maybe earn this particular feat, or maybe even earn a bit to increase my ability score attributes and stuff like that. But to Sam's point, we were saying before, feats are a lot of fun in that they unlike just ability score improvements, they can add a little extra, not just, abilities to your character, because some actually plenty of feats do increase your ability score as well as then offer some other more in-depth or flavorful aspects to your character.
It's a way to kind of differentiate yourself. It's abilities that you wouldn't normally get in your class, or things that can improve your stuff that you already do well, or even almost like a mini multi-class in some aspects as well.
In some ways,
I know you like those ones.
A little bit more flexible, like creative flexibility and freedom, and like crafting, a character that is a little bit more diverse and multifaceted. You know what I mean? Like, and it also just gives you a little bit more freedom in terms of like, because as we all know, D&D is a game that is pretty heavily predicated on its foundational like rule set on this is how these things work, like spells, abilities, attacks, all that stuff. Whereas feats do allow a little bit more freedom and free form kind of stuff, where it's like your character, instead of having to maybe roll for something or roll for this thing, you can just do this thing. For instance, we can go ahead and kick off now with some feat examples, I think. And one feat that I would actually like to reference right now, which is again, like, I don't know if controversial would be accurate for this one, but there is a very heavily debate on whether or not it's good versus bad, and that would be the Keen Mind feat.
Oh.
And Keen Mind is a very, in my opinion, it's actually a very interesting feat. Because essentially how it works is you have a mind, and quote, this is actually the feat's description. You have a mind that can track time, direction, and detail with uncanny precision, and you gain the following benefits. 1, you increase your intelligence score by 1 to a maximum of 20. 2, you always know which way is north, no matter where you are or what time of day it is or anything else. Speaking of time of day, you always know the number of hours left before the next sunrise or sunset. And 4, you can accurately recall anything you have seen or heard within the past month. So, this is a very, I think, interesting and nice feat to use as a reference for kind of like what feats can provide you almost on like multiple levels, right? Not every feat is going to do basically everything that Keen Mind says that it can, but I feel like Keen Mind is a good reference for like all the things feats can do for you. So for one, there are plenty of feats that allow you, again, to increase your ability score as well as give you bonuses and stuff rather than just taking your ability score improvement itself. Keep in mind, most feats, if not all of them, usually only provide you with like a +1 bonus to one stat specifically, whereas obviously if you take ability score improvements, you can either increase one stat by 2 or 2 stats by 1. But another thing that it does as well is what you've seen is this feat gives a lot of interesting opportunities for like more flavor and role play for your character, right? Always knowing which way is north always gives you basically an internal compass, allowing you to navigate with ease in a multitude of different ways, no matter where you are. Always knowing the number of hours left before the next sunrise allows, again, an internal clock, which can help, again, keep track of specific, maybe more time-constrained objectives or quests or anything else that would require that, as well as accurately recalling anything you have seen or heard within the past month can prove to be exceedingly helpful for if, like, nobody at your table is great note takers or whatever, or even at times where your DM might require you to make like a history check you could just say like, well, actually I have the keen mind feat. And so
Yeah.
at that point, I should literally just be able to remember what was said if it was within the past month without a check.
I mean, I like that you said you don't know. You're kind of like, is this a good feat? Is this a bad feat? To me, any feat that gives you an increase to your ability score and an ability is a good feat. Even if that extra ability is negligible, getting something else you can do plus evening out an odd score is a plus in my book. But that's just me.
I mean,
I like the numbers. I want to see all the numbers be even.
Absolutely. No. I mean, again, I have a similar feeling and vibe too, especially if like, you have your odd numbers. Anytime you have an odd number, you get a bonus +1 that takes it to the next tier usually. But it is in regards to like the discussion whether or not this is a good feat. The thing being, again, that makes this, I feel like, a great representation of kind of how feats can work is there's also a lot of debate and discussion on feats in regards to like a lot of them being like, is it truly necessary? Because it's also true. It can also be perfectly true and common that, for instance, like your DM would just expect you to like recall
Yeah,
in
I will say that
it wouldn't require you necessarily to even have this feat, nor for you to make a check to remember certain things. They might just simply tell you. You always know the number of hours left before the next sunrise or sunset. Like it could be that stuff doesn't really apply or matter much unless you make a more deliberate attempt and decision to make it relevant and applicable.
Yeah.
So that is the thing with feats such as this, and you'll have plenty that are like this that don't technically have, shall we say, a real prominent or abundant like application within a mechanical sense of the game, where it is much more like the vast majority of this, except for the ability score improvement, is much more kind of just flavor than anything else.
100%. But it kind of goes, it kind of goes in that scheme of like, skilled or observant or stuff like that, where it's +1 to your intelligence or a skill, and it gives you an extra little bonus. But sometimes those bonuses don't work in certain campaigns. I'm not taking, keen mind in a high power fantasy fuck around and find out D&D campaign. But if I'm playing Curse of Strahd and I can't see the fucking sun, I'm going to take, I'm going to take the feat because it might come in handy if it works for my character. If it's a fun role play thing for me, then I'm going to try it. Is kind of the way I look at it.
I feel you. Yeah. I mean, honestly, even in a high fantasy campaign, like I would still maybe take this, although that's the thing, right? I would love to take this feat maybe more so as like a free feat option.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, your DM has allowed you, again, you have accomplished some kind of high, important or difficult, milestone in your character's career or progression. It's like, okay, you guys can all choose to have a free feat. Like, I think this feat is great if you're like, for instance, a wizard, right? I feel like this is literally made for a wizard because it literally also has to do with, you can remember anything, not just in the intelligence boost, but you can recall anything that you've seen or heard within the past month. And obviously that could be super helpful and applicable. And like, hey, I can maybe learn spells easier that way as a wizard. Like that might maybe you could have your DM, you could request like, hey, maybe that could cut down the time it would take for me to like learn new spells, or allow me to recall new spells that maybe like I had seen before but didn't have access to for abundant period of time. But then the keen mind, because you can literally just have photographic memory, you can use that as a reference tool to then allow more freedom to like pick up spells and other stuff. I think it has great role play flavor potential. Absolutely, it's definitely one of my favorites in regards to that. But again, it does very much have to do with how much your DM and you are able to really apply it. But we can move on to another one actually, which might be a little bit more of a kind of an applicable or famous one, as kind of Sam actually just referenced. It would be the observant feat. Observant.
Yeah, let's see. I love
another particularly, like, I think rather famous, well-known feat. Alongside, it's kind of almost similar partner feat of like alert. Observant, quick to notice details of your environment. You gain the following benefits. You increase your intelligence or wisdom score by 1 to a maximum of 20. So this allows you to choose one or the other, which is fantastic, always great. 2, if you can see a creature's mouth while it is speaking a language you understand, you can interpret what it's saying by reading its lips. Now, once again, see that is like a very rare thing in D&D, right? Normally you don't have a lot of things that like allow you to be like, oh yeah, what about, reading people's lips? What about even like, for instance, sign language? What about more of those kinds of aspects and flavorful stuff? Now the thing is, again, you could absolutely just make a character that's like, hey, I know how to read lips. And your DM might just be like, okay, well, give me like a perception check to see how well you're able to like read lips, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could just technically have that down. But this feat is something that it kind of allows you to just have that and reference it quick and easily, as well as giving you a couple of other bonuses along with it to even justify like how and why you're able to do so.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's one of those things. You stack those two feats together with alert and observant, and no, you're gonna be able to see everything. It's the ultimate paranoia
Nobody's going to be
feat.
able to get the drop on you. You
No,
see everything. You can react perfectly. And last but not least, for observant, you also gain a +5 bonus to both passive wisdom perception and passive intelligence investigation.
yeah, it's one of those feats that I think if you take it on the right character, it can piss off a DM.
Oh, absolutely. I literally I was able to get like a passive perception of like over 30
Yeah,
with
you
a
could.
character one time.
It's ridiculous.
By using the speed. Yeah, and it is. Like it's like and for those of you again who might not be as familiar with like passive, like the term passive perception, passive investigation, and how those work. So maybe you are familiar with the terms, but you're also not quite clear how they work. Essentially, what those are is those are literally just like a person, you just have a natural innate ability once you have done something for so long, right? Once you have done something and practice it or even experience it over and over and over and over, you just begin to develop a bit of a sixth sense about something, right? And that's basically what your passive traits or skills apply to. Your passive perception is literally like the highest your perception could possibly be. Not possibly be. I think it's 10 plus like
your perception score,
your perception modifier or whatever else. And essentially it's like that is just what your baseline neutral like skill is. Like no matter what anybody does or what everybody happens, you will always just have this baseline thing. And it also particularly works well for like when a DM or even when you are trying to stealth past an individual who isn't maybe necessarily actively looking for you, but you still have to beat like a score to be able to go unseen or unnoticed without you or your DMs or rather the NPC being aware that you're doing something, right? So this is like a way for a DM, for instance, to be like, okay, you guys get attacked from hiding or from stealth by this assassin that you didn't notice. Because like at one point it's like he had to roll a stealth check, right? Because the way that he beats and says whether or not that stealth check succeeded is usually with your passive perception, because you're not actively looking for trouble. So therefore, it's not like if he, it's also a way of being like, if he says roll perception, that's obviously going to tip you off that something is up and something is wrong. And it's not really, then at that point, it becomes a bit of a metagame thing where it's like, it can be hard to justify because now you're on alert, right? You're like, okay, something happened. So instead of like tipping you guys off and being like, hey, roll perception for me to see if this guy beats your perception with his stealth, he can just use and reference your passive in order to say whether or not he succeeded on that roll. And so with observant, because you get a +5 bonus to both your passive perception and investigation, that shit becomes way harder. You'll just notice things easier without having to actually roll for them, which is always nice because rolling can tend to bog the game down at moments and times too. If you're, really trying to get some things going. Honestly, I think there's again a bit of debate, although I don't really know if it is much of a debate in my opinion, that less rolls usually equals better games.
Yes, it's kind of part of that debate of don't roll unless I tell you to. Because
I
if
mean,
every time you say, "Oh, I want to do this," and you just roll a dice, like don't roll a dice until I ask you to roll a dice, because you might not have to, and
well,
it's
that's what I'm saying.
alongside
That
that
and
thing.
or even conversely, if a DM literally is always rolling a dice for almost everything,
Yeah,
like that can get really
it's
for one,
slow.
again, it can really bog the game down and make it go much slower. Two, it also doesn't give you the feeling that you're really like this powerful, skillful adventurer who's experienced all this stuff and is trained for this time to be
Yeah,
good. It's just like, oh, and like you can just fucking fail, and there's nothing at all, anything that you can just do to accomplish. Like you're just always going to be able to potentially fail anything and everything that you do. And
yeah,
while it's always good to have, a number of things where it's like, yeah, you could still fail. You're not perfect.
hmm
But at the same time, it is also like, do I really have to constantly roll to like, freaking see everything in the environment, right? Like,
yeah,
do I have to roll to see and notice anything and everything? Do I have to like literally? I'm like, I see that person talking. It's like, well, roll perception if you see that person who's talking over there. And like, but they're right over. They're not hidden. I see them.
yeah.
Like, why do I have to roll for that?
And there's this thing that I like, which at low level, roll for everything. Roll for everything at low level because that's the whole point. Something could go very wrong and very quickly ruin everything you're trying to do, and that's the fun part of low level. Once you get past, I would say like past level 8 or 9, you're starting to get to the point where you're fighting things that common folk would consider to be apocalyptic to their town. Um, unless the stakes are high, I mean, like anything to avoid having to roll all the time is great. And something like observant, uh, I I usually only take on characters that are already, high wisdom. I don't throw it onto a character as like oh, and I can also do this. Like to
Yeah,
me, that's not as fun. But throwing it onto like a cleric or a druid that's already your party's eyes and ears, or even like a rogue that has high wisdom or a ranger, and being able to like sleuth out anything going on around them is so fun.
it is.
As annoying as it can be for a DM to deal with, sometimes they can't fucking sneak up on you for anything. It's
But again, it is at
it's
that
fun.
point. Yeah, it's fun, and again, it is something that really does help to convey that sense of like, oh, you are a badass adventurer who you've done this stuff. Like you are not easy to kill. You're not like a novice. You're not an amateur. Like you are powerful. You have done this, and you know what to.
Yeah, I mean, it adds a couple different options in terms of diversifying a character. You can make two fighters seem completely different as long as you have essentially, I mean, it's just essentially an extra couple things you get to do for fun, which is always for me a plus. I love
Yeah.
stupid things like that. I know it's not actually stupid, but I love it too much to.
I mean, obviously there can be some really stupid things. Speaking of which, like we can start getting into some of the more. These are the we consider the more taboo or divisive or divisive. I'm sorry, kind of feats and the like, which are always very fun and interesting to debate to talk about. This is the more controversial aspect of feats as well. One specifically being the Sentinel feat.
Ooh,
A lot of people will say, again, one of the biggest controversies about feats is a lot of people say that they break the game, that they can give just unfair, like intense, over the top, like features and abilities and things that essentially just bust and break the game. Sentinel being one of those feats, which, and in my opinion, again, at this point, I feel like I've already conveyed that I'm absolutely a person and a player as well as a DM that's like, yo, I am down for like almost just about whatever. Like because I feel like at the end of the day, you can always find any kind of like way around or way past or way over or through like any particular obstacle or issue or problem and the like as long as you are working and communicating together as a group and as partners, I feel like just about anything goes. Like I'm so open to just trying almost anything. With that said, I definitely feel like I might be on the side where I'm like, this feat is kind of just freaking busted in a lot of ways. Like it's kind of like there are absolutely ways around it, but I do feel like this feat sometimes can kind of go in the opposite direction of making the game a little less fun. at times, because it does, like, it would require so much deliberate, specific details and like tuning in order for this to not constantly just trivialize a lot of encounters. I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
Uh, so here's the thing for me. Sentinel is a weird one. I love this feat. Never taken it on a character. Not once.
Neither
I've
have I.
seen it
I've never
used,
taken Sentinel.
and I saw it used by a Cavalier fighter, and it was really fun, and like it made sense. It tied into his kit really well of like protecting people, and I don't think it's overpowered. Um,
Well,
in most fights that I have in D&D, there are the monsters that would even try to disengage from you on a regular basis are so big or have their own abilities that can kind of counteract this. Creatures that can push you away or move you gets rid of the entirety of Sentinel.
well, you know,
In rank and file fighting, it is really good. If you're trying to pin down someone, it is fantastic. Doesn't fucking do shit to a dragon though, because they can just move you out of the way.
Technically speaking, by the rules of it, you know what? Let's just go ahead and actually let everybody, all of our loving crowd and audience here, know just exactly what Sentinel does. By the description for Sentinel, you have mastered techniques to take advantage of every drop in an enemy's guard, gaining the following benefits. 1. When you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, the creature's speed becomes 0 for the rest of the turn. That is one of the biggest like things about this. Obviously, that is the bread and butter of Sentinel, where it's like literally if a person provokes an opportunity attack from you and you attack them, and hit them, of course, you have to hit them, you can effectively stop their movement. Now, we're just going to keep going and show all the aspects of it, and then we'll talk a little bit more in depth about why, like, at first glance, that might not seem super powerful, that big of a deal, but we're gonna talk about it real quick, especially in regards to some of the things that Sam said. But 2,
now I have to like check my homework on this. Oh no.
2, creatures provoke opportunity attacks from you, even if they take the disengage action before leaving your reach. 3, when a creature within 5 feet of you makes an attack against a target other than you, and that target doesn't also have this feat, you can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against that attacking creature. So, here's the thing, and here's, again, one of the biggest things, again, utilizing what Sam just talked about, one of the biggest controversial aspects of this feat. There is no, like, in terms of rule as written, there is no specification on how big a creature needs to be, on how, like, necessarily far away, except of course obviously it has to be within your reach, or specifically how certain things could qualify maybe as an opportunity attack. And so again, using Sam's example of a dragon, for instance, a lot of dragons are going to be fighting. Like, you could literally use this technically on an ancient dragon, which the size would be gargantuan. There's technically nothing in the feat's description that says that you cannot attack this creature if it moves out of your range and then effectively stop its movement to 0 by hitting it with the opportunity attack. Even though, if you think about it like flavor-wise or roleplay-wise, how in the hell is a medium creature, even if you're like, even if you're a fighter with 20 strength, this dragon is still gargantuan sized, is probably has a strength of 20 at least as well, a constitution of whatever else. Like, it doesn't even give a save. It's not a save or anything. It just stops it if you hit its AC. Yeah. So realistically, how could you possibly do that? You know what I mean? Which is one aspect, again, of this feat. And that's one of the reasons why I think, like, certain feats, that's why, like, for this particular one, this is one where I'm like, this one kind of does maybe stop a little bit, because it really does challenge your suspension of disbelief, right? Where it's kind of just like, oh, because mechanically speaking, this is what it says, that's how it works for everything. Even though it's like, that doesn't really make sense. And as well, it does also highly limit, again, the sort of things in combat that can make it cool and interesting, right? Because if effectively, if you're just like, oh, I run up on this guy and now he effectively cannot get away from me like by himself. He can't even disengage, which is again like usually one of the few things that any creature or character could do to not get an opportunity attack. That completely gets rid of that now. He can't even get out of it then. Like he can't even make the decision to be like, okay, I'm going to use my action to then not have to suffer or potentially suffer from this effect. It's like, no, if you just move out of his thing of your own volition and choice, he has absolutely every right to use this feat to basically say, no, you just wasted your turn or your movement, or you can't do anything else now. You're just here in melee with me. And
That's
that can,
true.
and again, if that happens, like, I think me and Sam talked about this a little bit with like other, like even in our multi-class kind of thing, we talk about that, where it's like certain features or certain classes that like you just do this thing and you just do it's a one-trick pony, right? If every encounter is gonna just basically be like, oh, this monster, again, this gargantuan monster, this Tarask I'm fighting right now is literally just gonna stay right here in this one spot and not really be able to do anything else. Like it can sometimes bog the game down and make it less fun because it's just, oh, okay, we're here now. Now, once again, to Sam's point, though, it is absolutely true that as long as this feat and as long as this feat you do not trigger specifically an opportunity attack, which there are a multitude of ways to keep from happening, such as forced movement or even certain other feats or abilities that allow you to not trigger an attack of opportunity, there are ways around it. But once again, it's still something that's like, if any character takes this, it's like, okay, now you have to deliberately like plan around it and then also kind of effectively make it useless, right? It's if once you basically do the things that would counteract it, the feat effectively doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, oh, we're just give some of your monsters mobile.
Exactly.
But the problem is now you're playing into it and now the feat doesn't matter. So now
And now they just wasted this feat, this choice, this thing for their character that effectively it like, and that in essence is the issue why I'm like, again, even when I'm usually almost always down with almost anything, it's like this feat either kind of just
it's hard. It's like a game of chess and it's just two queens sitting next to each other, like who's gonna kill me first?
Yeah,
Because it doesn't make sense. It's like,
well, it's too much. They didn't stipulate, like, again, if they had given, say, the creature like the ability to resist the thing, then it wouldn't be like you have to use such a hard counter to it, right? It's like you either allow this feat to continue with your with a character, and in essence it can usually really trivialize encounters a lot because it lowers the amount of like shit, or it increases the amount of like steps and stuff you have to take to get past it without directly countering it. Or again, yeah, like Sam said, you give your monsters and creatures certain feats or abilities that allow them to just basically completely nullify it, and it is now moot. It is
yeah.
not.
I mean, like, if I was running into a problem where someone took this feat and I wanted them to be able to do it, but I didn't like what they were doing, I'd give it maybe like a size limit.
Exactly.
So like they could go.
I would say you could only do it to a creature that is like one size category above you or lower.
Yeah, and like maybe the longer we play, maybe like if they have it at low level, they can do one size up, and as we go later and later in the game, maybe they're so good that it's two sizes up. But they just can't do the giant, like the gargantuous
couldn't
ones.
go more than two sides. Like I would almost put it in
like large and huge, but
strength.
anything after that, no.
I would put it maybe almost like in reference to their strength or dex mod, or their dex number. It's like, again, if you have like 20 strength, you're super
huge.
strong.
Huge is good.
You could like, again, like a lot of people don't necessarily understand like the correlation between like the 20 strength in like the game and what that can really mean, like, physically speaking. And it's like, you could probably stop a huge creature with 20 strength. Like I could envision that. Or even, God forbid, you get a belt of storm giant strength and your strength is now 29.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could see you could stop a huge creature then, because that is literally the strength of a storm giant. Like I would allow that. Probably not gargantuan, But I think
that would almost be like maybe instead of stopping them, they get half movement or something like
yeah,
that.
exactly. Like that's the thing. Like the issue being is with any feat or whatever else, if you have to literally tweak it yourself to such an extent to still make it viable enough where it's just not either completely trivializing and shutting down encounters or prolonging shit in response to having to do it without again nullifying it. In essence, I would submit that's probably not a great feat. It's probably not the best.
Too much work for something that should just work.
Exactly. As opposed to plenty of other feats that just do well, or even have, again, much more reasons for being the way that they are. Specifically speaking, we can talk about another particularly controversial and hated / maybe even loved feat. One of the ones that I personally always take because I need to.
Because you're terrible.
I'm terrible at rolls, and we're gonna talk about the lucky feat.
Oh, I don't.
Now, once again, let's just talk about exactly what this feat provides.
Yeah, I'll run through this one since
Please
you ran
do.
through the next one. You have inexplicable luck that seems to kick in at just the right moment. You have 3 luck points. Whenever you make an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can spend 1 luck point to roll an additional d20. You can choose to spend one of your luck points after you roll the die, but before the outcome is determined. You choose which of the d20s is used for the attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. You can also spend 1 luck point when an attack roll is made against you. Roll a d20 and then choose whether the attack uses the attacker's roll or yours. If more than one creature spends a luck point to influence the outcome of a roll, the points cancel each other out. No additional dice are rolled. You regain your expended luck points when you finish a long rest. Now, again, this is a feat I've never taken because it was in the first campaign I ever played. We had a necromancer wizard with luck. And let's just say it was henceforth banned from our table.
Yep.
I would take this feat in a game, maybe only with like one specific build I want to do, but both groups I currently play with have banned this feat outright. Which makes sense. It's funny. The guy who used it in the first campaign DMs in our other.
Well, let me ask how specifically did he utilize? Because again, one thing I will say about this feat is, I think people obviously abuse it, but I think the way they abuse is they use it incorrectly.
So when you say abuse it,
your dude utilize.
It's been a long time. We've been playing together for 5 years. This is our first campaign. So when you say abuse it or use it incorrectly, what are you referring to?
So here's the thing. I have taken lucky for numerous characters that I've used, not all of them, but a pretty decent amount. Specifically because for me, I am infamously known for rolling shitty as all hell.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I have always, like, I can roll just absolute garbage. Like I literally rolled like 4 natural ones in a row one time. It was uncanny. And everybody was like, yeah. So again, for me, having this feat is like, this is just more opportunities for me to probably fail. You know what I mean? But it still is something that's like, I need something
that's great.
Allow me to maybe have that glimmer of, I can maybe
just some hope.
Hope. You know what I mean? And at the
fleeting emotion of hope.
And what's really ironic is I literally just said earlier, it's like, hey, rolling less makes the game more fun, right?
Yeah, except when you take the lucky feat.
Except when you take the lucky feat, because it's also rolling less sucks if you constantly roll shit every time you get to roll. You know what I mean? And again, it is important to say, rolling less doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't roll for things. That's obviously also part of the fun of the game.
Yeah, there has to be a modicum of chance.
Yeah, when we say roll less, it really has to do more so with like not necessarily like rolling like literally just make like less overall, but specifically roll when it really is fun to roll
or important.
Roll when it's fun to roll, and not just because people say you should or you think that you should. Like, you don't always have to roll. And so, but it is fun. That's part of the fun of the game. So finding cool ways to roll is, in my opinion, the best way. You should find cool ways and reasons to roll, not just simply to roll. That being the case,
I mean, this
how I
weird.
Use it and how I interpret, I guess, the writing is you have 3 luck points. Whenever you make an attack roll, an ability check, or saving throw, you can spend 1 luck point to roll an additional d20. Now, I have seen at times people, and how I consider to be abusive of this ability is like, it's like, oh, you can basically re-roll like in multiple times of one check, right? It's like or a save.
No,
like
it's just once per roll, right?
It should be, yeah. It should, like, from how I determine it and from what it says, I usually interpret that as you get to basically just get advantage, and you get to choose which one you take.
It's just one roll, one extra
But
roll.
I have seen it, and I've heard about people who have like, oh, this person rolled, like, it used lucky, rolled again, didn't get a high roll, and they're like, well, I'm gonna use lucky again, and then rolled again, and then rolled again, and then rolled again, and then succeeded. Where it's like, that
doesn't seem right.
I don't think that is how it's supposed to be done, and that is indeed, like, doing it that way is definitely abusive, and definitely, like, that's kind of ridiculous. Where it's, and to be fair, you only get 3. This is true. But if you literally get, like, if you use that to literally get like 4 fucking tries on a roll, like 1 check, that is kind of ridiculous and busted. Like,
yeah, I will say, it was never used that way. We used it the way it was supposed to, once per roll.
Okay.
So I don't think he abused it. It was just the fact that sometimes it came in so clutch and it was so frustrating for the DM that he was like, this is just like, if you fail a roll, you fail a roll. Like, this is just a stupid. It's gambling. It's just gambling.
Personally, I like that. Like, even as a DM, it's like when they use luck, I'm like, okay. And because here's the thing, right? You could also make it where they could still fail. All it is, they literally just have advantage. And there are also so many ways in this game to get, advantage anyway.
I mean, like, to me, I'd rather just have expertise or proficiency in a saving throw than lucky.
That's the thing. Even that, like, obviously expertise is, because that's just a flat base and create, like, that's better than lucky.
And like, a proficiency with a saving throw, that's better.
With the lucky feat, you still technically, and again, I'm a testament to this, you still have to be kind of lucky and fortunate for it to even matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could still, and to be fair, I will even say, to be fair, it doesn't necessarily just give you advantage, because if you have advantage, it still technically allows you to roll a 3rd dice.
Yeah, and also it doesn't count as advantage. So if you say you roll a straight roll for sneak attack, you don't get advantage. You just get an extra dice.
Exactly.
The thing that I like,
get advantage, you don't whatever else.
It's just a roll.
And it also is fair too. Another way that I think some people have abused it or misused it is, you also, it says specifically that you can spend a luck point when an attack roll is made against you. But you can't spend a luck point to have an enemy re-roll their saving throw, for instance.
No, just attack.
It does not affect an enemy's saving throw.
No.
It literally, this feat, it only affects you specifically. It's literally like anything that affects you, you can use this feat basically to, like, affect. But anything that is not you, you can't. So that's why, again, if an attack hits you, you can say, oh, I'm going to use a luck point to have him reroll that thing that affects me specifically.
Yeah. Which, like, I've
heard some people use it the other way, where they're like, oh, he's made the save, I luck point, so he has to reroll. It's like, that's
just not reading, essentially. For me, the way I look at lucky, I don't think it's overpowered. I respect my DM choosing that both times. And being like, yeah, we're just not going to use this. And that's okay. I would allow it in a game. You know, it's just nice.
Again, like I said,
but I'd take it if I give the opportunity. I'd do it, but I never have, and I haven't looked for it.
I personally feel like I have no problem with this thing. Because, like, again, like I said, for me, like, I've taken this feat many times, and I like it's never necessarily, and another thing too is I also don't necessarily have the tendency to abuse it. Like, even with the opportunity, if I fail something, I'm like, I'll just fail that thing sometimes. You know what I mean? Because I also am like, I don't necessarily want to use it right then, because it could still be an interesting fight, or even it's more like I'll save it for something else that I feel is more needed. And maybe you don't know the effects of, like, an attack or an ability, and you're like, I'm not gonna luck point it, and then you get hit with something that's like bigger, like, oh shit, goddamn, maybe I should have whatever.
It sounds like you would benefit more from using it to make the attackers reroll, since you roll bad.
Like, well, it's that's the thing. Not even that. Like, I usually I guess it depends on the character, but it's usually more so used for when I'm doing things.
I
Like
know.
where I'm like instead of like an attacker hitting me or whatever, it's like I'm like, okay, I need to hit. Oh, I missed. All right, I'll look point to reroll that to try and hit. Like
Yeah.
rather than me being affected by something else.
Like all I want to use this for is the terrible build with halfling luck.
Oh,
So
God.
you can't roll
A
ones.
halfling divination wizard, just
Yeah,
like
with lucky.
with lucky. I mean, I wonder. Well, I also wonder. I wonder, can you take lucky? Because I think technically the halflings already get their halfling luck, so I don't know if you can get lucky.
No, there's a feat. I have to find it. Is it? Oh, are there not any racial feats in here?
We could make
No,
it.
no,
You
it
could literally
is.
do prerequisite and then go to halfling.
I thought there was a halfling racial feat.
Yeah, bountiful luck is
Bountiful luck.
your people have
So
extraordinary luck, which you have learned to mystically lend to your companions when you see them falter. You're not sure how you do it, you just wish it, and it happens. Surely a sign of fortune's favor. When an ally you can see within 30 feet of you rolls a 1 on the d20 for an attack roll, an ability check, or saving throw, you can use a reaction to let that ally reroll a die. The ally must use the new roll. When you use the ability, you can't use your lucky racial trait before the end of your next turn.
so the whole idea of I have portents that I can mess with and move dice around. I have lucky to if I fail something, and then I also have bountiful luck and halfling luck to just never roll particularly bad. Sounds fun to me. I tried to convince my Tuesday DM of this that it wouldn't be that good and that he could definitely let it in his game, and I was denied entry. So I guess if I ever find a fun DM, no, if I find a DM who doesn't think it's that good, maybe I'll get to try it one day.
Uh-huh.
As of
See, once
right,
again, your troll is showing, Sam. Your troll is really showing here.
but I
Uh,
wouldn't like I wouldn't spec myself to be that good at
I
anything
know, I
else.
know. You are
But
usually fair. Like you usually like to, you like to do these stupid, fun little things that you can maybe abuse, but alternatively, you usually
suck
compensate
at
for
something
the fact
else.
that, yeah, you're really bad at other shit, which is fair. It's a nice balancing act.
But yeah, I was not allowed to.
Yeah.
I
No.
don't find it that controversial. I know that it is
Oh,
a highly banned feat. A lot of people don't like it. I'm okay with that. Like personally, no love lost for me. I just
I
want to
mean,
play
for
the
me,
one
like again, for
character.
me, like I feel like it's a similar thing where it's like you just don't understand the struggle, man. Like
Oh
you
no, I don't roll well either, except
like
on
not
digital
not like you.
dice.
I'm saying anybody who bans this feat, I'm like you don't fucking understand the struggle, bro. Like this like oh my god, like once again. It's not even like it's not even broken depending on who you are. Like I can see for some people maybe it is. Like for instance, if a person like rolls immaculately like so much, like so well for most of the time, and then the one time they fail, they're like lucky, and then they roll really good again. They're just like, God damn it, I just wanted to get them. It's like I get that, I
Mhm.
could see that. But for those of us who are just utter garbage at rolling most of the time, where it's just like we're like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing, I want to be really cool, and it's a 2. And you're just like,
Ah, well, that's part of the
like I
game for me.
like I can't get up, man. I want to get up. I want to get up just a little bit, bro. It's hard. It's hard enough already on these streets, man. Can I just get like a little coin here to give me a little extra
Just
boost?
a
That's all I'm just
touch.
looking for a little extra juice. But either way,
Yeah. I
that
mean,
that in essence
is
is the
that
lucky.
whole debacle. Do you have any I do want to talk about something. I know because I know you like these feats a lot. All of the initiate feats are not my favorite. And a lot of people really like them for flavor and whatever. And for me, I'm just like, I'd rather just multi-class. Um, but I will say this, there's one caveat, and that is when you are not spending resources to take the initiate feats. So as we talked about before, like with boons or maybe you get a magic item or something, I think those feats are really good for that, whether it's a cursed weapon or a ring that talks to you and all of a sudden you are an artificer initiate or a warlock initiate. I really do not like the feats as a base feat. Like if I have to
I
spend a whole ability score increase just to cast
no.
like 2 spells, I'm like I'm good.
I I agree. So, in essence, for everybody again watching who might not be familiar, the feats that Sam is referencing, they are usually literally called like something initiate. So you have, for instance, you have magic initiate, you have eldritch, or that's Eldritch Adept, but you have magic initiate, you've got what is it, fighting initiate.
Fighting initiate's different. There's magic initiate and
I mean, even fighting
artificer.
initiate isn't great. Like,
Oh, I love that one.
it's okay. Once again,
Because you
it's
can
a
get
similar thing to your point on being like, you get a fighting style kind of thing, but there's artificer initiate, fighting
and magic
initiate,
and magic
initiate of high
initiate.
sorcery, strict save initiate, and magic initiate. And specifically, what Sam is usually probably referencing is the magic initiate feat, which has multiple different like of classes type. So it's like you can either be a bard initiate, a cleric initiate, a druid, sorcerer, warlock, or wizard initiate. And whichever one you choose basically gives you slightly different effects or bonuses and stuff. But the specific description here is you learn 2 cantrips of your choice from that class's spell list. In addition, you choose 1 first level spell to learn from that same list. Using this feat, you can cast the spell once at its lowest level, and you must finish a long rest before you can cast it in this way again. And obviously, your spell casting ability depends on what initiate class you chose for it. But obviously, I absolutely agree with you, Sam, that like if you're going to use this as literally in exchange for your ability score improvement, it definitely is not a great one unless, again, you're going for more maybe specific role play kind of thing. Like maybe it's a more flavor RP thing. Like it's great for that if you're like, you're slightly dabbling and specking into like, like your ranger, for instance, wants to maybe get a little bit more juice in their already super lacking magic aspect. They can take like magic initiate druid, right? You get cantrips at that point.
You get a spell
and 1 spell, because you wouldn't technically have cantrips, I think, as a ranger. So you would get that, which would be like, okay, it could be a nice little flavor thing. But it absolutely is great for, like Sam said, if you get like a free pass for
very human, get a special magic item or a boon is
like,
great.
For instance, for one of our game that we did briefly, when you gave us a free feat at like level 3 or whatever, level 1, whatever it was to start, I was like, oh yeah, I'll absolutely take this. Ironically, for my wizard. Like it was like, I was like, this is perfect because this allows me, this can allow you to just take extra stuff for that spell. Like if you already are that spellcaster class, you literally just get an extra free 2 cantrips as well as a free spell that you don't have to use you can just use. You don't have to use a spell slot for it either. Like you can just use it.
And what's funny is you can technically cast that spell with a spell slot. You can only just cast it for free once a day.
Yeah,
because you know the spell, especially like as a wizard. But for me, like the way I look at it is, I would only take warlock. I would only take magic initiate warlock for hex and just fuck around and find out. But
I would take no, dude. I'm one of the biggest ones is magic initiate wizard, because that's the one where you can cast find familiar.
That's a good one too. Yeah,
you get find familiar for free with that, and that honestly, like that would be the one magic initiate that I'm like, okay, if you took that as an ability score improvement switch, I'm like that could be worth it. Like that. So you get 2 free cantrips, which could help. You do have to take wizards, so obviously you could get. You have a pretty multitude to choose from. Like shape water, mold earth, whatever else. Like you get some pretty cool ones. But also being able to get find familiar, it will, like, that in of itself makes that one a pretty viable option, like for the ability score improvement, to be fair. The other ones, probably not as much so. But definitely if you get like a free allocation for that, initiates can be great. Well, specifically magic initiate, because then the other 3 are once again kind of their own thing. For instance, like artificer initiate is, you've learned some of an artificer's inventiveness. You learn 1 cantrip of your choice from the artificer spell list, and you learn 1 first level spell of your choice from that list. Intelligence is your spellcasting ability for these spells. You can cast this feat's first level spell without a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you can do it again. You can also cast that spell using any slots that you actually do already have. You also gain proficiency with one type of artisan's tools of your choice and can use that type of tool as a spellcasting focus for any spell you cast that uses intelligence. So overall, like that's not great. Like
No.
even as a even as a free feat, that's probably still not awesome. You know what I mean? Like you're not like it might again function a little bit better as a flavor thing, but mechanically wise, you probably would just be better taking Magic Initiate, like for sure, and probably just like Wizard.
Which is fun.
Fighting Initiate, if you want to take that one, Sam.
Oh, I love fighting the shit. So, and it's not great, but it allows you to grab a extra fighting style. And you can replace it if you need to as well when you level up and get an ability score increase. The reason I like this is there are certain classes that don't have access to all of the fighting styles, things like Rogue, Ranger, or even if you're doing like a Spellblade type character where your main class is a spellcaster, but you want to also fight in melee, you don't get access to every fighting style, and fighters do. And so what I love is being able to add something on. Say you're playing a artificer and you want a ranged build. You can take archery to just a +2 to ranged attacks or stuff like that, where it can be helpful. It's not the best. It's another one of those feats that like it's better as a free feat, but depending on how well I rolled on a character, if I rolled really well on a character, I'll take it.
No, honestly, like getting like once again, I think the irony of it is I feel like almost like these feats work better for the class that you're literally like taking from. Like for instance, if you have a fighter class, taking just another free fighting style, like if you have a ton of other fighting styles already, like you just stack up on fighting style, like you get blind sight out to 10 feet, you get the +2 to your archer, you get a +1 bonus to your defense from protection, you get like if you're doing like a dual wield build, you take dual wielder and you can use your modifier from your strength in with your offhanded weapon attack, so you can attack more and get the same damage bang for your buck. If you take duelist, you can just if you literally just stack up on that, I think, ironically, it would probably help more so for the classes that you're taking from instead of maybe even using it for classes that don't. But it still absolutely can help for classes that you don't as well. Like Sam said, if you're a character that gets into melee but you don't really have access to any fighting styles like this could be a nice little thing to have. It has a lot of cool stuff.
It can shore up your shortcomings a little bit. Yeah. But it's not, it's definitely not a glamorous pick.
No, fighters never are, unfortunately.
If I'm looking at a glamorous pick for fighting classes, things like Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter, if we're talking about feats that a lot of people take, or Polearm Master, are all kind of the opposite of that. They're very flashy, high risk, high reward, fun feats that make you ridiculously powerful depending on the math.
Since you went ahead and said the names, let's go ahead and just reference them.
Yeah, we'll start with Great Weapon Master.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Everybody, if you're willing a two-handed weapon, everybody takes this fucking.
Yeah. So before you make a melee attack with a heavy weapon that you're proficient with, so you technically don't have to use two. Isn't there a way to wield one-handed heavy weapons, or is that in a different edition?
No, there is. I believe.
No, I don't think so. Never mind. Unless your DM lets you do stupid things.
Well,
essentially,
I think it's literally dual wielder that allows you to wield two weapons
that aren't light.
Yeah, that aren't light. Yeah.
So you can't wield heavy, but
yeah,
you take a -5 penalty to the attack roll, and if it hits, you add +10 flat damage to the attack. Now Sharpshooter is the same, -5 to your hit, +10 to damage, with the addition that you get the higher range without disadvantage, and you ignore cover except full.
That's for Sharpshooter. Yes.
Yeah, I'm comparing the two.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the whole thing for these is, flat damage.
Yeah,
the math is there.
Literally, the biggest appeal is just that +10 damage that you just baseline is obviously huge, especially for most martial classes. that it's like, you know, you just get that thing. And plus, also, to be fair, with a great weapon master as well, you score a critical hit with the melee weapon, or if you just kill a target outright, you can attack again as a bonus action, which again, like you couldn't technically do with a great weapon usually. And that just allows you to get more damage,
More
hits,
damage.
which is just like, that's awesome, dude. Once again, sharpshooter, being able to ignore half and 3/4 cover is insane. Not just that, you also ignore the disadvantage penalty to shooting long range with any ranged weapon. That's crazy. Like, that's just like, I would say sharpshooter is probably even more busted than great weapon master is. Like, I don't think great weapon master is considered busted in my opinion. It's like there are definitely ways that you can build around it to make it kind of busted, where you're like, you literally can guarantee that plus 10 damage because you just can hit so high and you have a plus whatever. That, like, one particular thing that I did, I put it on my paladin I think, what is it, Conquest?
Vengeance.
And no, it was Conquest, because Conquest specifically gets the Channel Divinity Guided Strike, I believe, which essentially gives you a plus 10 to hit.
Oh, yeah.
So that literally just means I get a plus 5 to hit now. I don't even suffer from the penalty of Great Weapon Master now. I just get a plus 5 to hit and get the plus 10 damage just straight up.
Yeah,
you know,
it's ridiculous. I usually pair Sharpshooter or Great Weapon Master with a class or ability that allows you to give yourself advantage. So Great Weapon Master with a Barbarian, just recklessly attack all day.
Everybody
doesn't matter.
does it. Like, there's no reason.
Sharpshooter with like Samurai, or if you use it for a Rogue.
Or even literally a gunslinger. You know what I mean?
It's great because you can take something as little, like as puny as just a little dagger, and turn it into something that does, you know, instead of a D4 plus 5, it's a D4 plus 15. If it's magic, you roll an extra dice. I mean, it just, mathematically speaking, skyrockets your average damage, especially if you have a good plus to hit.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, your bonuses, and if you have any other things.
The thing is, if you're at a table and you're fighting someone with super high AC, you choose whether or not to implement it, and you can do it per attack. So say your first round, you don't know your attacks, and you're like, damn, I'm not rolling well. I'm not hitting at a super high AC, even with advantage. I'm just not rolling high enough. Well, guess what? Next turn, you don't have to use it.
No,
you know, you can choose. It's not a winner takes all. You have to do it every time.
It's true. It's not like a reckless attack where you have to call it out the first time and you just do that the entire time. It is specifically case by case where it's like your attack. However, I will say there is a specific caveat that you do have to call it before
you attack. Yeah,
you can't roll it, see the result, and then be like, oh, I'm gonna put sharpshooter on that. Like, you know, it's not like a smite or a sneak attack in that. You do have to take the risk that -5 is gonna drop you below what you need. You know what I mean?
It's a gamble. Probability wise, on average rolls usually come out on top.
I mean, again, because -5 isn't huge. It's not daunting. It's not terrible. Again, especially once you get like higher levels, when you have like, you know, an attack bonus of maybe like 12 or
13,
even like
you know, like you're still, and if you have advantage, I mean, you're good if you can flank stuff like that. Not flank.
You know, for those of us, of course, who don't always roll garbage. Like, it's like, I don't really take sharpshooter or great weapon master, even though I
digital
like
dice, my friend. Digital dice.
It's like, for me, again, statistically speaking, despite the fact what Sam said, for me, that doesn't usually work. So I'm like, I don't usually take Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter for myself, because I'm just like, unless again I can guarantee to get that hit, such as with like the Paladin that I made. I was like, that doesn't really matter. But if it's relying on rolls, I'm like, no, I can't trust.
You know, you'll end up seeing this on a lot of end game, like, you know, high level fighting builds. You know, I enjoy it. It's fun.
It is. They're really cool. Like, you feel powerful.
And when I used it on I had a barbarian paladin that I used it on, and I could really rack up damage, and it was fun because, I mean, screw it, I'm already attacking recklessly. It's in my character's nature to be just crazy. I might as well just have some fun with it.
This feat was absolutely built for barbarians, like 100%. That this is literally with them in mind, that you are just a crazed savage, you are just tearing things apart with your attacks, and it fits And that's why I like Great Weapon Master, maybe a little bit more than Sharpshooter, because one, I don't feel like it's actually broken, and two, I just feel like it does really give you that sense of like flavor with a character who's just like wrecking stuff with this big blade. Like you feel like your guts from Berserk. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I may put
absolutely.
myself in a terrible position after this, but I'm gonna hurt you real bad.
Yeah. Yeah, or I could potentially miss. You know, I could with throwing a ban, just wild reckless abandon, I could miss. But if I don't, ooh, buddy, you're gonna get it.
It's gonna be fun for everyone.
We can go ahead and move on to the third lovely feat that Sam referenced, and this is also considered to be another potentially controversial feat, especially used in conjunction with the feat we just previously talked about, Sentinel. We're going to talk about Polearm Master.
I will take a caveat. I've never taken this feat.
Neither have I.
I took Sentinel. I took Sentinel one, but I
used against me.
I want to do Sentinel, Great Weapon Master, Polearm Master at least once. When you take the attack action and attack with only a glaive, halberd, quarterstaff, or spear, you can use a bonus action to make a melee attack with the opposite end of the weapon. It uses the same ability modifier as the primary attack. The weapon's damage die is a d4, and it deals bludgeoning damage. While you are wielding one of those weapons, other creatures provoke opportunity attacks from you when they enter the reach that you have with that weapon. Yep. Now, this allows you to basically vanguard a hallway forever.
And so long as if it's like literally a narrow hallway or passageway, if it's like only 5 feet wide and you can't like move around, this would allow an individual. I mean, technically speaking, you could do that with your body, but this also allows you to stop forward progression for most creatures within 5 feet. So again, used in conjunction with Sentinel, this would allow you to, when an enemy comes within your reach, and again, most, if not all polearm type weapons have a reach of 10 feet, not 5. They're longer, meaning they technically would enter your opportunity attack range at 10 feet. And most things in the game only have a reach of 5 feet with their attacks. You know, most medium-sized things, even large-sized things, usually only have an attack range of 5 feet. So, as Sam just said, this effectively would allow you to stop a creature in its tracks as it comes to attack you. It literally couldn't. It runs over. Not only can it not attack you, but it also, in trying to, has most likely lost its movement to try and attack anybody else. It effectively can't do anything that turn. It has lost all its movement because of Polearm Master and a Sentinel feat combo.
Yeah. It's fun.
It's fun, and once again, like I said, like I as a GM have had this used against me. Like one of my players in a game that I was running, he took this combo, and I let him do it because I was like, okay, no, that's fine. Like I said, again, I'm usually very open. I'm like, that's cool, but this being the case, and to be fair, another specific caveat to keep in mind is you technically only get one reaction per round. So you technically could only do this to one creature. Like you wouldn't be able to do it to multiple. So like once you stop one creature in its tracks, you couldn't do that again to other creatures. And they could technically, if there were enough of them and there was a wide enough area, they could swarm you. But to Sam's point, like I said, if you're fighting one creature, if you're fighting like an adult dragon, you could stop it in its tracks from 10 feet away, and it would only be able to, I think, hit you maybe with like its bite, because I don't think its claws have a reach. So again, it still is very powerful for sure. But in reference to like the player that I had in my game, I had to put in the mobile feat, or I had to justify like forced movement where it didn't technically provoke opportunity attacks going into his range.
Yeah, I am mad that I can't do a Kensei monk with Polearm Master and use a glaive because they're heavy. But it's pretty fun. The idea of just being able to kind of do whatever you want, in the sense of like I control the area around me now. If you want to come up to me and you don't have reach, I can stop you from getting to me and hitting me. And that's huge, especially in like, you could build it as a duelist. So like a fighter with all 3 feats. I mean, it'd be really annoying.
I mean,
Sentinel, great weapon, polearm master. You take mobile as well, and you're just a duelist. Battle master as well. So even if once they get close to you, you can then trip them. So now they're 10 feet away from you and prone. And you
like I said,
kill
I'm not
them.
gonna lie, it would be super cool. Like again, and even just the fact that you're able to synergize feats like this is again another really cool aspect of feats, right? This is again why like feats are really cool and interesting because it allows you to do things like this that you probably wouldn't be able to do in the more just vanilla core rules of the game a lot of the time, right? You can come up with all kinds of cool dope combos and mixes and broken stuff and or even just flavorful cool things, and that in essence lies the charm of feats. But they absolutely can have a problem too. They can be a problem. That is absolutely the case. Specifically, like I said, with this one, this could definitely, it's so cool. Sam's idea is so freaking awesome and cool, but in practice, it's absolutely troll behavior of the umpteenth highest degree, and you're just like, I would shudder to be that GM who has to deal with that shit and just be like, God. But it's cool, and I can't deny that. I want to talk about another potential, another favorite feat of mine, and I think probably of everyone most likely. It's just a feat that honestly is one of the few that is like I shouldn't say few, but it's definitely one that is worth taking as an ability score alternative, in my opinion. That feat is going to be resilient.
Yeah,
like resilient is. It's just really good, guys. Because here's the thing. Okay, so it's very simple.
No
It's
fluff
very
at
simple,
all.
straightforward. It's probably one of the simplest feats that you'll ever get, and yet once again, it does like so much in its simplicity, and that's one of the reasons I love it too. Essentially, you get to choose one ability score, and you gain the following benefits. You increase the chosen ability score by 1 to a maximum of 20, and you also gain proficiency in saving throws using the chosen ability. Now, again, this is one of the few things in the game that allows you to gain more proficiency for a saving throw. Like usually most classes, you're only ever going to get like proficiency in 2 saving throws. Some classes allow more at higher levels and pretty high levels at that. But most classes, like you get just the 2 unless you like take resilient, which in my opinion, I'm almost always like, I think I've taken resilient in almost all of my classes that I have, like at least at some point.
I love resilient. It's a great. I mean, it's again, it's the numbers game, which I love. People I think underestimate what you can do. You have a paladin on your team. You take resilient. You're now proficient in half the saving throws. My favorite is to just take someone and be proficient in all physical saving throws. Strength, dex, con, or wisdom, dex, con instead of strength, because nobody ever uses strength. But now you are just ostensibly really good at not getting yourself killed or turned or just in general. You're just good.
It just offers you far more like longevity and defense, which I am almost always a fan of in any medium. Like anytime, any games or whatever that I play, I'm almost always like, bro, I'm kind of the thing of like, the greatest defense is one of the best offense. Like if you just can't be killed, like that's just great. That's what I'm all about. I'm like, yo, fucking longevity and survival to the max.
And like it's one of those things where you can use this in such a way where there's the whole like, oh I'm gonna get the highest AC in the game. You will not be able to hit me. Well, what happens when I breathe fire on you or cast a spell or trap you in a gelatinous cube? Like,
that's the thing.
Well, guess what? Now you have to roll a saving throw. And if your saving throws are shit, it doesn't matter how high your AC is. You're going to die.
Take that damage. You're going to take that damage, and usually it's going to be a pretty decent high amount of damage, especially compared to what attack rolls can do.
Yeah. Oh, you have high AC
levels.
I'm just gonna turn you, so now you attack your friends, and they're not gonna be able to hit you either.
Yeah, you won't be able to break free of your charm because they can't hit you at all, and so you're just gonna do that stuff. I'm gonna dominate monster, and you're there. So I mean, again, resilient, and it's even though it's so simple, it's so straightforward.
It's
just so great. And again, like I said, I think I've probably taken this on all of my spellcasters. Any spellcaster that I play, it's almost always a foregone conclusion that I'm going to take resilient constitution specifically. Resilient.
It's a good Take that in Warcaster.
More health and proficiency in constitution saving throws, which would equate to concentration checks. So it's just,
and then you just take Warcaster, which is another great feat.
Yeah.
And then you have advantage on con saves.
You get advantage on con saves, and you are now proficient in them. And so it's going to be super hard for your concentration to ever break. And it's just great. And you get more health. Health is always great, especially for spellcasters. Always great.
Do you have any? I want to touch on. Do you have maybe an underrated or underused feat that maybe isn't very good, but you like it anyway? I have one, which is Tavern Brawler. It's a dumb feat.
Tavern Brawler.
It's a dumb feat, and it doesn't work. But I will make a drunken monk with Tavern Brawler, and I will make, or I don't know, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And I will make improvised weapons do D12 damage.
Yeah, man. Like, Tavern Brawler is it's such a charismatic little feat. You know what I mean? Because it's just, you just think of the possibilities, right? Just again, the role play potential. Even though obviously the mechanics wise, it's pretty underwhelming, but it's just like you're just like
Hey, at the very minimum, it's a +1 to con, so it's an A in my book.
Strength or con at the very minimum, like yeah. But specifically, what Tavern Brawler allows is, as Sam said, you get an increase to your strength or constitution score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You are proficient with improvised weapons, which again, no other way to do that. Improvised weapons are literally like, they're improvised, so you can't use your proficiency bonus for them. But with this, you can. Your unarmed strike uses a D4 for damage. And now, while I realize that probably sounds kind of dumb, like it doesn't make sense, keep in mind that for a lot of characters that aren't monks, you only use technically your strength modifier, just base, for unarmed.
You just do 5 damage or 4 damage.
If you have a 20 in strength.
Yeah.
So if you have like a 10 in strength, you would literally do no damage. Which in my opinion, I always felt like that was stupid. I feel like even monks shouldn't be the only ones that can use dex for their fucking unarmed strikes. Like
I would rule it. I would rule it.
I always say you can use either dex or strength to your unarmed strikes. But point being, with Tavern Brawler, you use a D4 instead, and I think you still technically add your modifier even after that.
Yeah,
for your damage.
It's a proficient weapon, so it's just a normal weapon.
You get an extra D4 now. It's like a dagger basically now. And also, when you hit a creature with an unarmed strike or an improvised weapon on your turn, you can use a bonus action to attempt to grapple the target. Now, unfortunately, in the current version of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, grappling is woefully underwhelming, unfortunately, in a lot of ways. It's not great. Even if you take like the grappler feat, for instance, still not awesome, even though I feel like it should be. A lot of people do. But overall, it is a nice, cool little thing. Because it's just like you just imagine yourself being like, this rough and tumble, like either rogue or maybe like a pirate or whatever. You get into like a fight. Like the thing I always comes to mind when I imagine this feat is, have you ever seen the Assassin's Creed Black Flag trailer?
Yes.
The first cinematic trailer, when he's in the bar and he like sits down and he like, dude comes up and they just start getting into literally a bar brawl where you start hitting people with like bottles and stuff, and you like hit him with his elbow. And it's like, that's exactly what I picture with this feat.
Oh yeah, and like
messing shit up with everybody.
It's great. And it allows you to it's just great. And I love it. The whole option of, well, now you can actually do this with optional class features. For monk, with the dedicated weapon feature, you can basically make improvised weapons. Well, kind of. If you have a nice DM, you can make improvised weapons a monk weapon for you. And it's not like it gives you any advantage, but the idea of walking into a cave and fighting a dragon with broken beer bottles and a chair, like I totally, it would be so fun and stupid. It would be great.
Personally, I would also rule as a GM. I'd be like, because you took Tavern, like I think you could get that extra D4 on top of your damage. Like whatever your martial arts die is, I think you could roll that, and you get an extra D4 on top of that. Like, because that's what it says. It's like your unarmed strike uses a D4 for damage. I don't think it would just go away. Like, I think it would just be extra damage. Personally, I think I would allow
my thing is like if is an improvised weapon considered a simple weapon, because then you would just be, you are, as a monk, as long as you have that like the extra proficiency, because it's a simple weapon, it counts at, it's not heavy or special, it technically counts as a monk weapon for you, so you can run around and kill people with it. Same thing with the blowgun.
Yeah.
And it'd be great. I
Not allowed. That sounds freaking hilarious.
It's
And
stupid, but it's
um,
fun. It's one.
for yeah,
No, it's just, it's one of those feats where like I have not seen a single person take it, and I do, and I will one day make this
I've
character.
seen it. I've seen it once, but that campaign unfortunately didn't last super long, and it was also like the DM in charge didn't really let them do like more cool things with it, so it was kind of just like that. That of course, guys, is always the risk where it really, like Sam said, it really does depend on your DM how willing they are to work with you and allow certain things, or like to again maybe tweak certain aspects of it to make it maybe like that really fun, flavorful, but still maybe mechanically viable to a certain extent, aspect that you're looking for. For me, a feat that I think is a little maybe underappreciated and used, but I think is still really cool and great, is the Skulker feat.
I was going to
Like
bring up Skulker as well.
I haven't really seen a lot of people take this feat. I have a few times, and I love it because it's just like, I feel like, again, with either being a rogue or a ranger, I feel like it would be great. It would be perfect. Because again, how it works is you are expert at slinking through shadows. You gain the following benefits. Now, this prerequisite, it does have a prerequisite. You need to have a dexterity of 13 or higher. So obviously, you being one of those two classes is kind of the point. Because you can try to hide when you are lightly obscured from the creature from which you are hiding. Now, in reference to that specific thing, again, the rules for hiding in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is murky and kind of all over the place at best. Like
Yeah.
like I think me and Sam did talk a little bit about that specifically when we were talking about the rogue class during our introduction to 5th Dungeons and Dragons 5e 5th edition D&D classes.
I have a bone to pick with the hiding rules a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of people do, because they are not the best for sure. But one thing I will say with this feat, I think it would give you a lot more flexibility to be like, oh, I can hide just kind of whenever, right? Because obviously it says here you can hide when you're lightly obscured. So that basically means like lightly obscured is essentially a condition where it's like, say there's some light mist or fog in the area, right? It's not thick, it's light. That means that you're having kind of trouble recognizing features, or maybe like seeing people from a bit of a distance. Same thing if it's like dim light, for instance. If it's like dim light, that would technically consider, I believe, like be lightly obscured. Again, you can't really recognize certain features and stuff. This, while normally, technically, you would not be able to hide from somebody because they would still technically be able to like see you. This technically gives you like the flavor that it's like, oh, you are just so good at like tricking the eye and the vision or whatever, that you can still attempt to hide even in those conditions of light obscurity or dim lighting. Which is just great. Again, it's nice to have that kind of ninja aspect, right? Or do that thing that Batman does, where he
steps into a shadow and then
you turn around and he's like gone, and he just like appears out of a shadow a bit. Like that's it's just fun. That's a fun, cool flavor thing, but it could also be a mechanical aspect that should, again, your DM be nice, allow you to utilize.
Yeah, the idea of throwing this onto like a mastermind or inquisitive rogue, and you're basically like a detective who just like slinks into the shadows and disappears, sounds so fun.
I mean, another thing that I feel like it fits perfectly with is the Gloomstalker rogue, where it's like
ranger, right?
Yeah, Gloomstalker Ranger. Sorry, yeah, Gloomstalker Ranger. Like
So
this again, not even necessarily for the mechanics of it, just the flavor of it. It's Skulker, Gloomstalker fits perfectly, and like at high level, you are just so, you are literally Batman at that point. You are just Batman.
And people don't realize the what the best part about this, or for me, yes, the lightly obscured hiding is great. The not giving away your position if you miss a ranged attack is fantastic, and the dim light not imposing disadvantage on your perception checks is so good.
Exactly.
Because in D&D, if you're in dim light or lightly obscured stuff, like if your perception sucks, yeah, they can't find you, but you can't find them
Exactly.
either if you roll poorly.
And so technically, it would just be a straight roll.
Yeah, which for you wouldn't help, but for me would be fine. It would be, it's helpful, and it's something that like I don't think a lot of people think about. I think a lot of unexperienced DMs don't implement those disadvantages the way that they should.
I agree.
And this feat, if you're at a table with a competent group who makes it difficult the way that it's meant to be, is a huge upside.
Oh, 100%. Because again, like
it's just one, you take it once and it sits there and it just passively makes you better.
It's just there, just makes you better. Like again, like Sam said, the other two abilities of this feat are when you are hidden from a creature and miss it with a ranged weapon attack, making the attack does not reveal your position. So once again, it really is playing into that whole like ninja one with the shadows concept where like you can't see this person unless you know they have actually hurt you and hit you. It's like literally like they fire an arrow, or maybe they like throw a dagger, and it comes so fast that you don't even know where they were from where they hit. Like even like again, technically you could be like, oh, well, I can maybe track the trajectory of where it came from to then reference where it is, but it's like you still actually can't get a bead because maybe they like had an echo where they ran off in a different direction or something, and you're not really sure exactly where they are at that point.
Yeah.
Because and then also obviously the dim light doesn't impose disadvantage on perception checks falling on sight. Once again, like it is really cool, and I like Sam referenced. The unfortunate aspect of that is most DMs aren't really going to keep that in mind, right?
It's an unfortunate rule that if you're playing in a very tough campaign that's supposed to be hard, like Curse of Strahd or like a really grindy Dungeon Delver type campaign, you're going to run into it. You won't in most games that you play.
It's also, dark vision. Everything has dark vision.
Which is funny because dark vision allows you to see, but it doesn't mean you're as good at percepting things. But that's a kind of contested rule point that people don't use.
And they don't like to, they don't like to, and I like we were saying before, and like most people don't want to basically give more opportunities for them to fail. You know what I mean? Most people aren't necessarily as interested in that stuff as like me and Sam would be, for instance, on like, most people are just like, yeah, I do just want to, always succeed and always want to like, even though it's like, hey, part of the fun about this game is you can fail. It's okay to fail.
You can lose. You can die. You can never play this character again.
Exactly. Or you could die and then play it again because you could bring it back. It's okay. It is okay to lose. It's okay to fail because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean that you're worse, or you can't do this thing, or you can't like whatever. It's just like, hey, this is what gives us risk. This is what makes this game so much more meaningful and impactful, and it allows you to really feel like I am accomplishing something. Because again, what's really the point if it's all a foregone conclusion that you're going to succeed automatically? You know what I mean? Like that's just a story. Then you should just read a story or a book like that then, if that's the case. Or because that's also the thing about playing games, right? Video games, you can die. Doesn't mean that it's over. You just you revive, you try again, but you can die, you can lose at times, and that's okay. But yeah, this is one of my favorites that I feel like is a little underrated and underused. And I'm like, dude, this thing is super cool. Like I would love to be able to utilize it. I've used it like on bad guys, for instance. Like I feel like DMs absolutely use this for like some of your monsters or your NPCs and stuff like that. Because that could be a great way to scare the crap out of your party. Because it's like, even if they like get attacked, if he misses them, it's like, oh, you still don't know where he is. They're just picking off from the shadows, man.
Yeah, I love the idea of the sharpshooter, skulker, rogue ranger, like bad guy who shoots you from 600 feet away.
Yeah,
and you're like, it didn't hit me, but I have no idea where they are.
I don't know where that came from. How did that happen?
And the funny thing is,
I literally used this on a what was the? I think it was a scout rogue, the one that allows you to like sneak attack two separate people, and like I did this as like a like and was able to like crit sneak attack and crit on both of them because of this ability that allowed him to hide in only lightly obscured areas and stuff, and as well as if he missed, they still couldn't find him. Like
Yeah,
like
it's an extremely helpful feed. It's, again, a lot of people look at what it gives you and they're like, well, we don't really do this at that at our table. And you know what? If you don't, you don't, and you don't take the feat. But there's at least, out of the 3 things that this feat gives you, there is at least one thing that's going to come up at your table regularly. If anything, it's the hiding, being able to hide in more places. If your DM actually holds you to the fact that you can't just hide anywhere. There's something that a lot of people forget, especially when they first play this game. You can't just hide wherever. And the weakness of rogue, if you're trying to hide, is when you get caught in an open field traveling. And the way that I look at it is, say you're in a caravan, you can hide there like twice. But eventually the dragon's going to know that you keep hiding there, and they're just going to breathe whatever breath weapon they have at that whole area and destroy your hiding place. And if your DM doesn't do things like that, well, then you're going to roll every fight. And taking something like this, allowing you to like maybe hide in a divot in the field or hide amongst some tall grass as opposed to hiding behind a solid object, is huge.
And to be fair, on the other end, it does very much fall to the DM to provide those environmental anomalies or differences and stuff to allow you the ability to utilize your class to the fullest extent and to give you those opportunities and things to do. Again, we talked a lot, I think, about this when we were speaking of the rogue on our class introduction video, is where it's like, that is a thing that I feel like does not happen as much as it should, in my opinion, because I think any good GM will and should do that. You should provide your players with the ability to utilize their character classes to the absolute peak that they can within reason. Of course, it doesn't always have to be right. You absolutely could just drop them in, like if you're in a coliseum, for instance, like you're doing like a tournament fight, it's like you're probably not going to get much. Maybe there are some pillars that you can maybe hide behind, or maybe they're like some wreckage, some like little like sand that's higher, maybe you can cut off line of sight.
The thing for me, it's a tango. You have to work with your players. So if you're in a Coliseum fight and it's not midday, say it's the evening, half of that Coliseum is going to have some shadow in it, just from physics. So
and if you're lightly obscured in any way, like maybe, and how I also like to play it off, even like in those maybe situations, is like literal line of sight, right? People can't see 360 degrees all around them unless they're like a beholder or something.
Yeah,
right?
like if you have a giant monster and you run into the shadow along the wall of the Coliseum and hide, and you use your full movement to get all the way around them and into the shadow, they're not going to be paying attention to you at that moment. They're going to be paying attention to what's in front of them. I will allow you to attempt to hide. Maybe I'll give you disadvantage. Maybe I'll just let it happen. But if you take Skulker, I'll definitely let you do it. If you don't,
for sure. Like with Skulker,
if you don't, for sure. I don't know. It's hard because there isn't really a spot for you. And it's something like this, and there's a couple other feats like that where it gives you this little thing that like it doesn't sound so great, but if you actually pay attention, you have to ask questions. One of my favorite things to do when I'm playing D&D, say we're in a cave and I'm trying to get like a monster's attention or test how far down a cavern goes, and we don't have rope and I don't have the best light source, and the light source only goes out say 30 feet or 60 feet and I can't see the bottom. Okay, are there rocks around? Is there a small rock around? And my DM's like, sure. Like, yeah, you know what? It makes sense there would be. And I drop it and I count. You have to ask those questions, and your DM has to be receptible to those questions and actually think about, would that happen here? Would that be here?
Would that be applicable? Is that reasonable? Again, everything within reason. You know what I mean?
Rule of cool, but within reason.
Yeah, within reason. You know what I mean?
And Skulker is a good example of something that can take advantage of that if both you and your DM are actually cooperate.
Are working, cooperating, and synergy. Again, is really important.
I'm trying to think.
You wanna go ahead and we can talk about a couple of other ones that I think maybe are like, we've talked about a lot that are either like, really intense, controversial that we really like. What about, and some of the ones that we don't like? What is a feat that you feel like you don't like, Sam? Like I already said, probably the only real one that I feel that way about is like Sentinel. I was like, I'm not a huge fan of Sentinel for reasons that I explained, but like, what about you? What are some ones that you feel like this is just a bad feat?
So I think I have a feat that I would love to change a little bit and tweak. And
Okay.
you could very easily do this as a DM. It would take a lot of research and thoughts on your own part, and that is the poisoner feat.
Poison.
Um,
Oh yeah.
because so just to go over what it does right now, poisoner is you can prepare and deliver deadly poisons, granting you the following benefits. When you make a damage roll that deals poison damage, it ignores resistance to poison damage. That's awesome.
That's great.
When you apply poison to a weapon
Things
or
can be
piece of
resistant to poison.
ammunition as a bonus action instead of an action, that's also really good. You gain proficiency with the poisoner's kit if you don't already have it. With 1 hour of work using a poisoner's kit and expending 50 gold worth of materials, you can create a number of doses of potent poison equal to your proficiency bonus. Fine. Once applied to a weapon or piece of ammunition, the poison retains its potency for 1 minute or until you hit with the weapon or ammunition. When the creature takes damage from the covered weapon or ammunition, the creature must succeed on a DC 14 Constitution saving throw or take 2d8 poison damage and become poisoned until the end of your next turn. Now, I think they put this in here in Tasha's because people were like, poisons, that's a thing we do. And there wasn't really a lot of support for it.
No.
This feat, while interesting and some benefits of it are really good, like the ignoring resistance to poison damage
Great.
and putting it on your ammunition
Bonus
as a
action.
bonus action,
Yep.
great. The rest of it, eh. The reason I say that is because there is no way in hell that you don't get better at making poisons, and it doesn't give you the support to do that. So what I would do is if I had someone who's like, I want to make a character that uses poisons, fantastic,
You're like an assassin. Yeah.
great, I love this. But now I have to go over every single monster and weird thing that you could make poison out of and figure out how this would work.
Yeah.
The fact that it is a save or suck saving throw, I'd throw it out completely. It should be half damage or full damage, because every instance of an enemy poisoning you that does poison damage, so like there are monsters, like humanoid monsters, like assassins, that come and attack you, and if you save on the saving throw, you take half damage. So why can't I do that? Is basically the way I look.
It's essentially like a cantrip where it's like save or suck. Like,
yeah, I don't like that. And
I agree.
For me,
the DC built in is pretty low too.
I think like at baseline, when you're first starting out, like say you're like level 5, you take this feature, or level 6, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Starting out, your basic poisons, that works for me. Don't make it save or suck. Don't make it save or suck. And I don't like the 1 minute. Poisons can last longer than that. I would say maybe it takes some extra effort. Maybe you can only have a certain amount and you have to keep it in a separate container. Well, there's something you can do about that.
I think one way of supplementing that is like make the gold cost more, right?
Yeah.
Like be like, because that basically would then show you're using more potent ingredients to your potions and making it higher.
Or like give it the day. Give it the day. Instead of a minute, give it the day. And the reason I say that is because you waste the ingredients. The moment you make it, if you don't use it that day, say you make poisons that morning and you don't fight anybody, that stuff's gone.
I agree.
You can make the poison and not apply it.
Even poisons that do last, like a vial, it's like it just takes too much to use it, and they also just don't. It doesn't apply enough oomph.
So, like for me, the way I'd change it is if you don't apply it, the poison lasts. But once you apply it, it's that day or nothing. So you have to, at the beginning of each day, you can make some poisons that night before, whatever. But if you don't apply it if you apply it at the beginning of the day, if you don't use it, it's gone. And if you try to apply it in battle, that's action economy. You're losing some bonus actions. I would say in battle, instead of being able to apply it to, because in free time you can apply it to all of your ammunition. You could do a bunch of ammunition.
Yeah, you could.
But in battle, it's one piece of ammunition that you're poisoning per bonus action.
You have to constantly use bonus actions. Yeah,
and you could sit there for a whole turn and use an action to poison and also a bonus action, and I'd maybe would give you a couple extra pieces of ammunition, not just 2. But for me, this feat, I would have to specifically work it out with I'd have to build a custom feat using this as a baseline and build it with the individual person. It doesn't give enough
to really justify it, especially
as a feat. No,
especially later level.
What's stopping
Again,
me from just taking getting a class that has a proficiency in a tool that I pick anyway?
yeah,
What's stopping me from just making a poison making character and not taking this feat?
yeah.
It doesn't.
Or just homebrewing a completely different poison mechanic.
Yeah. So I think it's a feat that I love the idea of, and the execution is just not great. Um, to be fair, I would be very annoyed if someone constantly was using a bunch of different poisons, and you have, as a DM, have to limit what they can acquire.
Yeah.
But it is a sink of resources, and if you're, similar to like the whole wizard copying spellbook thing, if you don't give them access to those things, they don't get to do it as much. And if you don't like how often they're doing it, then don't give them access to it.
Yeah,
you know
you could either limit access to it because they've maybe dried up the resource or whatever
Yeah,
that they
or
had
make it
access to
harder.
before, or like I said, yeah, or for instance, it's like, if you're fighting, once again, maybe like make it a tier system where it's like, okay, you want to make a more powerful potion or more powerful poison, it's going to cost more resources and more time to make it. And then, because again, like once you start facing higher level enemies, it's like, oh well, this isn't really going to do much anymore, really. Like it's not really going to be much worth it to do all of this shit to code it, and then you're going to use a bonus action and all that stuff. Like it definitely has, like you said, high potential to be really cool, especially since like it's so weird that in the game there really isn't like a lot of diversity of like poisons in the game that you can use. Like there's like tons of poison that the DM can use from like creatures or monsters, but like the players, it's like, yeah, why can't we also do this? Like you get a vial of poison that's like, oh, it does an extra 2d4 poison damage or something.
Yeah,
And
2d8
that's
and
about
this
it.
one is, it's one of those things where, like, if I'm putting in the effort to learn how to brew potions or learn how to brew poisons,
Poisons.
and
Yeah.
setting aside time with a poisoner's kit or an herbalist kit or whatever,
And
then
alchemist.
you have to help me out too. Because if I don't get support from the DM to do these things, I'm wasting the feat.
Yeah, it won't matter.
No.
It won't matter. And that's obviously that's another thing too in regards to like, the more what show the like artisan side of D&D, right? We have all of these tools and all of these things that you get technically as like your background or maybe even your race abilities, and it's like none of those things could have any effect in the game at all unless your DM is like, hey, let's do this. Like let's apply this kind of thing to the game. And to be fair, D&D also just doesn't have much things that really do readily apply that, right? And even when they do, like a lot of like, say if you want to make like a potion, a lot of the rules for potion making that like in the rules as written are really bad. Like they're just like they take way too long, they take so much resources and things, and you're just like, it's not even worth it, just go buy some. And so I feel like this poisoner, if I was going to have somebody take the poisoner kit, I would absolutely do that too, because I think it would be like a game where you need to just revamp the entire like artisan side of the game to be like, hey, this is how you make stuff. This is how you make shit. This is how you do that. You want to make armor, you want to make potions, you want to make, scrolls, like magic books, whatever you're doing. This is how you guys do that thing, and it's like a tier system thing, and you can do just this amount like fast and quickly with lower resources. Or if you want to make more and more potent stuff that can grow in power, ability, capacity, it's going to take longer and maybe going to take some more stuff from you. Which I think is just a more fun way to play the game overall.
Which is why I brought that up, because I feel like it's one of those things that both of us can see why it could be good or a terrible baseline. What would you? What's your pick here?
One, I think another particularly famous, beloved feat that I think we should mention, because I think it would be a disservice not to, especially for anybody maybe who are new and haven't heard of it, and are maybe looking for feats that are great to take and maybe even like to take over ability score improvements, would be, and we mentioned it earlier, the mobile feat. Mobile is another one of those feats that it's just great, man. You just get a lot of great stuff for this feat. Specifically, you are exceptionally speedy and agile, and you gain the following benefits. Your speed increases by 10 feet. Once again, this is a permanent increase, too. There are very few things in the game that actually just give you permanent speed increases, like without you having to do anything. And unless you're like a specific class like barbarian or monk. You also, when you use the dash action, difficult terrain doesn't cost you extra movement on that turn. As well as finally, when you make a melee weapon attack, not a weapon attack, when you make just a melee attack against a creature, you do not provoke opportunity attacks from that creature for the rest of the turn, whether you hit them or not. That is amazing. Right there, like that's gonna do so much for every like martial class in the game, and maybe technically even some spellcaster classes too, really, if you think about it. But that in essence is incredible. Not only are your speed increases by 10 feet, so most classes and races are going to get like 40 feet of speed right there, which is more than most medium-sized creatures in the game. And so you'll always be able to outrun just about anything else. On top of that, when you make a melee attack against a creature, you don't provoke opportunity attacks. So once again, like we said, this is literally the exact counter to the Sentinel feat that we talked about earlier. You have this feat, Sentinel literally is null and void. Can't do anything, does nothing. But it also is a cool thing about, like, you don't even have to hit them. That's also a huge aspect. You don't
just
have to
swing at them
for it to work. It's literally, and I what I like about it too is the fact that it gives that really great RP aspect where it's literally like you're hitting, like swinging at them, and like you maybe in that moment you temporarily blind them as they're like dodging out of the way, and then you use that opportunity to like swing around them to get away from them. Like, I feel like that's great, and I think that adds much more, again, capacity and allowance to the game, more flexibility and flavor to it overall. You know, instead of just like, oh, I move out of your reach. Doesn't matter how I move out of your reach unless I like teleport or some other thing. Like you're able to just attack me then. You know what I mean?
It's great though. It's a feat that I'm looking to take next level up in my Tuesday campaign.
Yeah.
For my dual wield gambit-esque rogue with rogue. It's a rogue fighter.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna
tell me about that. Yeah, that thing's nasty, man. That's a nasty.
It's
build.
gross, and it's gonna be very fun for me. But it's
honestly,
one of those. It's just a good feat. It's just good. I took it. I used to have it on my barbarian. It's like fantastic.
Similarly to resilient, it's a feat you're probably going to always want to take for like any martial class that you have. Like it will almost always give you like great increases no matter what for almost any martial class.
I mean, specifically for melee, it's really good. For ranged, it's a hit or miss. If you're like a midline fighter where you go back and forth,
yeah,
it can be very helpful.
That's the thing. It doesn't work for range attack. It does have to be a melee attack, but still, once again, you don't have to hit, right? So then even for like spellcasters, like that's still great. Like if somebody dude comes up on you, all you have to do is like, you or even, use a melee spell cantrip attack. And if you miss, you can still run away, and you have 40 feet of movement most likely at that point too. So it's like you can get out of their range. Like they probably can't catch up to you at that point. Like,
yeah. Plus anybody that can dash, the whole difficult terrain not costing movement is huge.
It can definitely help.
It's just so good. It's basic, but it's really, really good.
Once again, like that, it's same thing with resilient. It's simple and straightforward, but it just how it works just applies to almost everything across the board, which is why, in my opinion, it's definitely one of the best feats in the game, and obviously why so many people take it, because it is. Let's talk about the armored feats a little bit. There are a couple of different like armor based feats, whether it be like mastery or like just armored, like proficiency and stuff. So essentially, as you know, certain classes, they obviously get certain proficiencies with equipment, weapons, and armor, so for instance, like wizards and sorcerers, they do not get any armor proficiencies at all with anything. So one way that the game tries to maybe supplement this or find a way to bolster this is you can take a feat that allows you to learn how to be proficient with armor and obviously weapons too, but we're going to specifically focus on armor. One of those being is there are 3 different tiers, obviously, which is light, medium, and heavy. Way to learn how to be proficient with light armor is by the feat lightly armored. You have trained to master the use of light armor, gaining the following benefits: increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum 20, and you gain proficiency with light armor. Very simple, very straightforward, pretty middle of the road. Like honestly, it really is dependent upon kind of what you're wanting to do, with a character. I think in regards to like whether or not this is worth, an ability score over ability score improvement, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? Because there are just so many other ways to help offset your AC, even as a spellcaster. Like again, unless maybe you're a wizard or a sorcerer, like I feel like those would be the only ones that you really would ever maybe even consider taking this feat for. Because
I'd say
otherwise, I just
so.
don't. Yeah, I just don't feel like it doesn't really offer much of anything to anybody else. And even to those, even even to those two classes, there are other, and granted, they are more powerful, like items. Like they're more like legendary to very rare to rare items. But there are other things that can help boost their AC while also still giving them other things that they would actually really use more and
Yeah,
are more applicable to them.
the thing that I would look at is maybe taking heavily armored if you're a cleric that only has access to medium armor.
Yeah.
So like Arcane Domain cleric or life, not life cleric. No, is it light cleric that only has medium armor?
They might be light cleric because that's
So,
that's the baseline. I think player's handbook one is like is
well, there's
light.
life has heavy armor, light has medium, and so like if you just really want to bump your AC up a little bit, it's great because it gives you a +1 to strength, which also might help you get to that point where you can even wear heavy armor because there is a strength requirement.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, the heavy armor master is terrible.
It's pretty bad.
It would be good if it's a free feat you got at the beginning of the game when nothing does magic damage, but once everything does magic damage, it doesn't
Even
matter.
I mean, even then, it's still not great because okay, for heavy armor master, and not to be confused, there's a feat called heavily armored, which is the thing that gives you proficiency with heavy armor, and there's a feat called heavy armor master, which is basically something that allows people who have heavy armor to do maybe some extra stuff. So I mean, it's essentially like you can use your armor to deflect strikes that would kill others, which is not actually accurate, unfortunately. They're just trying to make it more, intimidating and such. But what you get from this feat is you increase your strength score to by 1 to a maximum of 20. So again, that's always nice. It's always nice to be able to increase like an ability score as well as get like an extra effect. But the unfortunate thing is with the extra effect, it's just not that great. It's pretty underwhelming. Because while you're wearing heavy armor, any bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage that you take from non-magical attacks is reduced by 3. Now, like Sam said, maybe at the beginning of the game, this might be okay. This might be helpful a bit because obviously most things you're going to be fighting probably won't have magical aspects to their attacks, and they probably won't be dealing like a ton of damage. And so maybe that extra reduce of 3 could help save you at some point. But overall, like even at medium level play, when you're like I would say even as low as like level 5 at that point, like I'd say a lot of things you're gonna be fighting around like level 5 and stuff probably are gonna have some magical aspect to them that's gonna it's gonna make that null and void. And even again, the things that you don't are still gonna be hitting you for such damage that the -3 might not really do much for you.
No.
Like
The reality is that the two good, in my opinion, the two good armored feats, because lightly armored doesn't really help you if you have mage armor.
yeah,
Um,
mage armor usually gets around that. Like
the
it
two
allows
best
you, I guess, to
ones,
leave like a spell slot and maybe like and it gives you
one's a
weird thing.
first level spell sizing. I mean, I prefer that to wearing real armor. It's medium armor master
Yeah,
being the ability to not have disadvantage on your stealth checks
spell
and
checks,
also adding
and
3 rather than 2.
that is
Um,
great. That is actually pretty helpful for like again certain like druids, bards, warlocks,
you have to
even.
have a decent dex, so you have to have a dex of 16 or higher, which that can be difficult depending on how you build your character, but at the very least medium armor master and heavily armored are viable options. The other ones, you'd be wasting your time. They're straight up non factors in terms of how you're building a character. I mean, you could be a meme. You could be a meme
You
and
could,
build
and
a wizard and take
it was
every single
all,
feat.
yeah,
But you'd have to take like minimum 3 feats, maximum 5 feats, to get there, and it's ridiculous and not that
yeah.
helpful.
You could be a heavy metal wizard if you really wanted to, like a
Just
heavy
take a
armor
level in
metal
fighter.
wizard. Yeah, and it's like, okay, but it just doesn't, aside, as Sam said, aside from medium armor master, none of the other ones really offer any true worthwhile bonus, because there's other things that can do that stuff just way better than they can. Like I said, with items alone, like even, for instance, even mage armor at higher levels is really going to start to drop off in terms of a viable spell for defense, because you just start getting items that increase
Your AC.
higher. Yeah, just at base level. And it's like, unless you take, for instance, like the Eldritch Adept feat, which we can actually talk about maybe right now, just really quickly, because once again, that's probably one of the best feats in the game as well. Eldritch Adept, which you kind of mentioned earlier.
You love that feat.
I love this feat. I love it because it gives you, again, once again, I feel like it can at times, depending what class and character you're building, can absolutely be worth a ability score improvement slot. Specifically, so how it works is you do in order to have it, you do have to have spell casting or pact magic feature. That is a prerequisite. Like, you do have to be able to like cast magic in some way, shape, or form to have this. But studying occult lore, you learn one Eldritch invocation option of your choice from the Warlock class. Your spellcasting ability for the invocation is Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. You choose. If the invocation has a prerequisite of any kind, you can choose that invocation only if you're a Warlock who meets the prerequisite. And you can replace the invocation with another from the Warlock class whenever you get a level. So what that basically means is you get access to the list of Warlock invocations, which is just magic and like spells a lot of the time that you can cast as much as you want without doing anything, or even just cool effects such as you get like Devil Sight, which is amazing. You can just see 100 and wait, no, is it 120 feet or is it just simply you see through
120 feet?
Yeah.
And you can see through magical darkness
of dark vision that you can see through both normal and magical darkness. So one thing about dark vision in the game baseline is there are a number of spells and other just magical effects where it's like you can't see through magical darkness with normal dark vision. You won't be able to. With this, you can't. So for instance, if you cast like a darkness spell, even around yourself, you're just cloaked in darkness, you can see through that. And everybody will have disadvantage on any attacks against you, while you will have advantage against them. Wonderful, fantastic combo. You could take Eldritch Sight, which allows you to cast Detect Magic at will without expending a spell slot. You can just do that, which means you can just sense magic within 30 feet of you as much as you want and figure out like the school of it, all the other stuff. You could take, again, the Mage Armor one. You can just get free Mage Armor now. You can cast it as much as you want. You don't have to expend a spell slot. It's just free. You can do that. You could take Master of Myriad Forms or whatever. You could take Disguise. It's a Disguise Self spell.
Yeah, Mask of Many Faces. I love that one.
Faces. That's the one. As much as you want. Like it's once again great because you effectively get a spell that you can just do as much as you want. It doesn't matter. Like, and that is absolutely, in my opinion, could be worth, depending on like what character you're making, absolutely could be worth an ability score.
And like this is also something that you can take as a warlock already and just get an extra one, because that's something that
like Wizard and Magic Initiate. You know what I mean? It's just extra.
Because low-level warlocks, they don't get a lot of invocations, and your invocations can be huge in determining how effective you are. I recently started playing a character that did not have what is the one that allows you to add your damage?
Eldritch Spear, I think.
No. Something blast.
Agonizing Blast.
So I didn't take that until like level 7. Or something. So I was so bad at combat whole time. I didn't do any damage because I'd roll like 1s and 2s on all my Eldritch
and you
Blasts.
have a minus to your charisma?
No, but I couldn't add charisma to it.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Yeah, no. obviously adding your charisma to it is a huge thing.
And
Like,
so for me, like,
even at level 1, you could potentially deal like 15 points of damage.
Usually it's more like 13, but still.
Potentially, depending on how you roll, of course.
And so it's just it's one of those things, like, there's a lot of options in the Eldritch Invocation feature. Some of them do have prerequisites, whether it's level or warlock class or pact.
Yeah, pact.
But the basic ones, a lot of the ones where it's like even stuff like Eyes of the Runekeeper or the Beast Speech one.
Beast Speech. You can just talk to animals now as much as you want.
The thing is, whenever you level up, you can change it. So say you realize that you're not really using it a lot. Well, guess what? Look at the list again next time you level up. See if you want to change it out.
Just switch it out. Like, that's, again, it has such versatility and flexibility. Like, it's fantastic. It's something that will just, it's something you can almost always have something that will be helpful to you. You know what I mean? In some way, shape, or form. So that's another really great one. What other one? I think maybe another particularly well-known, and I think one's more like a pretty good one, even though it's super simple. Probably maybe the most simplistic one is the feat Tough. Literally all it is, your hit point maximum increases by an amount equal to your level when you gain this feat. And then after that, whenever you gain a level, your hit point maximum increases by an additional 2 points. So that you just get more health. You just literally get double your health, almost, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, and that, again, for spellcasters,
twice your level, and then you get extra 2 hit points. Yep. Level 20, you have extra 40 hit points.
Extra 40 hit points. And that's nothing to sneeze at. And that, especially for spellcasters, phenomenal. Like, it really is. Like, I was able to get my wizard over 200 hit points with this feat, which is obscene. It's ridiculous. Like, that's a wizard with over 200 hit points is just freaking crazy.
Yeah, I'm just terrible, and I take it on a bear totem barbarian with max con.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, that is the other way to go. You can literally just get literal stupid levels of health and also resistance, and double that, basically. You could probably get a barbarian with technically 600, over 600 health, maybe even 800.
Yeah, it's like, it's one of those things where
all damage.
I just don't want to die, is essentially.
Yeah, you become essentially unkillable, or unmurderable, basically. You can't be murdered or killed. You can die, but you can't be murdered or killed. And it's another just fantastic thing. Oh, and since we're right next to it, let's just go ahead and go with the one right below it, since we spoke about it before. Warcaster. Another
that's like a must-take feat. Yeah, for a lot of classes.
It's as the name suggests, it is one of the, again, next to Resilient, probably one of the, if maybe not even more at times, almost the must-have spellcaster feat. You have practice casting spells in the midst of combat, learning techniques that grant you the following benefits. You have advantage on Constitution saving throws that you make to maintain your concentration on a spell when you take damage. You can perform the somatic components of spells, even when you have weapons or shield in one or both hands. When a hostile creature's movement provokes an opportunity attack from you, you can use your reaction to cast a spell at the creature rather than making an opportunity attack, which will usually have to be a melee attack, a melee weapon attack.
Which is huge. It's great for crowd control.
It does have to have a casting time of 1 action. It can only target that creature. So you couldn't, cast a fireball spell, for instance.
No.
But that, like Sandra said, that's huge. That's a huge thing. Like, think of, for instance, you could even cast, if you have a wizard with or a sorcerer with shock and grasp, you could cast a shock and grasp cantrip and shock them. They would then lose their reaction for that round. They would just lose it. They couldn't then do anything if they moved to somebody else. One thing that I did one time is, as a druid, you can use a vine whip on them, or what is it called? Thorn whip. Thorn whip is the spell. That's it. You can use thorn whip on them, where they literally run past you. You could technically wait till they're 30 feet away from you, and then thorn whip them and pull them back 10 feet. Like this, it's great.
One of my favorites, and it's it doesn't happen very often, but the ability to wait till someone gets right up in your face and then Bigby's hand grab them
Yeah.
to keep them from doing anything, or to impose, because it's technically it's a spell that can target somebody when it's cast.
Yeah.
It's a little workaround. Some DMs would probably
It
be like,
is. It would
no,
be. That's a little murky for sure,
but I
but
love it anyway.
yeah, it's like you could technically use that spell as a means of affecting them.
Hmm.
Because it doesn't specifically say that it has to be an attack spell. Um, it does just have to be a spell with a casting time of 1 action and target only that creature.
Yeah,
You
it's
could
pretty fun.
technically disintegrate somebody
Yeah.
if you wanted to. You could be like, oh, you're running away? Disintegrate, like, and fire a disintegrate beam at them if you wanted to. Um
And
Ridiculous.
we're not even, I mean, we're touching on the fact that it's even without that ability, having advantage on con saves for
On concentration checks specifically,
you're already up.
that's already great. And not just that, but I mean, even, and to be fair, this might not be, again, we talked about this before. It's a lot of this is semantics and kind of more fine-tuned stuff and aspects of the game. But you can perform somatic components of spells even when you have weapons or a shield in one or both hands. Now, technically speaking, in the game of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and many others as well, you do have to usually have at least one hand free to, like, do the necessary hand signs and symbols and stuff like that in order to cast a spell. Like, that is still technically necessary, which is why a lot of the time, even when you have, like, say, an arcane or druidic focus, you still technically need to be able to speak and then, like, hand sign in
Hmm.
order to cast spells. A lot of the time that won't necessarily come into play because depending on certain things, it can bog down combat, and, like, people also just forget because it is a much more fine, specific tuned, part of the game. But with this specific feature, you don't have to worry about that. You can still do it. Like, you can hold something and still go, like, and then, like, cast a spell, even if you're holding, like, a sword or a shield or whatever in your hands, which is awesome. Super cool flavor too, if nothing else. But that, in essence, is the Warcaster feat. Always great, always a one of a huge must-haves for any spellcaster class or even half caster. Fantastic. Let's see. You know what? We talked about Observant before, and also referenced a little bit of its kind of what a lot of people consider maybe to be its partner feat. So let's go ahead and hit that one. We're going to talk about Alert.
This is a favorite of mine.
Me too.
It's you're always on the lookout for danger. You gain the following benefits: a +5 bonus to initiative. Already
That's
great.
that right there is probably the most, like, the biggest part of this feat. Once again, very few things in this game. Well, there I think there are definitely more now, but used to be, especially back in the day, so few things allowed you to increase your initiative besides just your dex score, right? Because that's all it is. Your initiative is literally just your dexterity modifier.
The only
And there are very few
ones,
things that just increased it outside of that.
yeah, it's Jack of all trades and the swashbuckler rogue.
Yeah.
But this gives you a flat +5, which is huge. You can't be surprised while you are conscious, and other creatures don't gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you. Now, there's a little bit of contention on this middle part. Surprise.
And then also subsequently the one below it, which is a similar thing that usually has to do with surprise too.
Yeah. Or if you're fighting rogues or assassins. But surprise is one of those things that never gets used correctly. I have never had it been used correctly in a game. I think my DM just looks at surprise and goes, "We're not dealing with that."
Yeah, I think we talked a bit about this before too. Like, because again, it's
I think, not to go into surprise because it's so back and forth, but the reality is that the other two parts, not being able to have an attack have advantage on you if they're, like, hiding from you, and the +5 bonus to initiative is enough to take this feat.
it really is. That already makes it quite amazing. Like,
Yeah, I don't take it often. I think I would take it if I did a bard swashbuckler build and just run around with like plus 15 to initiative.
For me, like I think that once again, this is definitely a feat I'm very is near and dear to my heart. Like I've only taken it maybe like once or twice on a character, but it's something that I love because for me, once again, being infamously horrible at rolls, but also specifically initiative rolls. I'm always horrible. Like I can almost never ever get like roll above a 9 for initiative. And so obviously having just this flat bonus where I'm like, I need that to like ever have a chance of going first in an initiative. Like even with a high dex character, which I usually like to play. I usually like dex, but even that, like again, I roll if all I do is roll 9s and below, even with a +5 or maybe more, highest I'm getting is a 14. You know what I mean? Which is usually middle of the road a lot of time for initiative.
And it's one of those things where it's just solid numbers. Again, we come back to these feats that were like these are really good, and it's all solid, just numbers addition,
Usually,
as opposed
or just
to
something that can be applied to again almost any situation that you're in. You know what I mean? No matter what you're doing, no matter it's not super specific or super whatever. Like it's something that can be applicable to almost any situation that you're in, and it doesn't necessarily automatically break the game in almost every situation. You know, it's just like it's just a and that in essence maybe is also one of the best, a great way to sum up what a feature is. A feat is a good feat is a feat that just applies almost constantly. It is a passive boon and effect that you can utilize and have in almost any situation that really matters and counts, and that is what makes it worth taking over an ability score improvement, because that's what ability score improvement is, right? You take ability score improvement for what you need. It literally just applies to so many different things that you constantly use and need that make you better in the game. And that's that in essence is also what a good feat should be. Let's see, what are some other ones that you feel might be like interesting, but like again just don't necessarily really have quite that oomph to really make them all that viable. I got a few that I could
you
name.
can start because I have some ideas, but I don't know. They're still technically viable, but
One thing I'm thinking of is like athlete is one that like when you look at it, when you read through it, and we'll do that right now, you have undergone extensive physical training to gain the following benefits: increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum 20. So that's nice. That's always great. Having an increase is always awesome. 2, when you are prone, standing up uses only 5 feet of your movement instead of what would technically have to be half. Usually in the game, when your character falls prone or has the prone condition, it usually costs you half whatever your full movement is to stand up. So most creatures, for instance, would only have like 30 feet of movement. It would cost you 15 feet of your full movement to just stand back up.
yeah.
With this, however, only costs you 5, which is phenomenal. Climbing also doesn't cost you extra movement. Now, with that, there's not a lot of stuff that honestly climbing comes into to way. Like a lot of people kind of do climbing differently in a lot of ways, and so that doesn't necessarily always apply. And last but not least, you can make a running long jump or running high jump after moving only 5 feet on foot rather than 10 feet.
This feat is great for your low magic campaign setting.
It could be,
but and when I mean low magic, I mean we're talking like Middle Ages low magic. Where it's
spells cost so much, like they're
like they barely exist. Like being a spellcaster,
that's what I mean. Like they barely exist because most of them cost like they're so hard to do.
Yeah, taking something like athlete, it's just not really worth it in its current state.
That's my point. It's like it looks really cool on paper, and there are cool aspects to it overall. It's like this could be something that you think like, oh, this could be so cool, but so much of it is like just not, again, really applicable in that consistent way that you're kind of just like, or at least not enough of it is where you're kind of just like, this is worth, giving up an ability score improvement for this kind of thing. Once again, maybe a free slot, but even in a free, even as a free slot, it's still just not really gonna pack as much oomph as a lot of other like feats would, as opposed to it. And so it kind of just, it's lackluster and kind of falls behind. I think in a similar vein, the Charger feat.
I was gonna say this, to me, you can still use it. The kind of the combination of, yes, you have to use your dash action. But like if you're at a point where it's definitely lower in the lower level campaign, where you only have 1 or 2 attacks a turn, if you run up to something, you might, I mean, it could come in handy, but it's just,
Well, that's the thing. Even then, it's like maybe. But once again, the biggest issue with this, like I agree, lower level, it probably would be much more relevant and much more applicable and helpful. But once again, once you level 5, you're just gonna do much more damage, like statistically, or again, yeah, statistically, you're probably just gonna do much more damage just by attacking twice rather than running forward and trying to, dash and then bonus action attack for that extra bonus to the attack's damage roll, the extra 5. Like,
yeah, the only thing I can think is that maybe it's viable if you commonly find yourself not being able to move far enough to get attacks in.
I feel like that's never really going to be the case, because at that point too, you could also just attack twice with a ranged attack.
Yeah, but say you're a hardcore short sword and board
Sure.
fighter and you just don't have the movement, whatever, you could make a case for this. I believe you could. No, it's just,
It just doesn't
really work that well.
Like, yeah, there's no matter what you do, and the thing being too is that there also are just other creatures and maybe even other abilities that give you something that's just better. Like, again, just take Great Weapon Master. Just take Great Weapon Master, go up and you get a -5 to the attack roll, but you get a +10 to the damage, and you get to do it again if you wanted to on your second attack. It's not, the biggest problem is that this costs you an action to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest issue. If it was a bonus action, like instead, if it was like reversed, where it was like, oh, you can now bonus action dash. And if you use that bonus action dash, and move at least 10 feet in a straight line, you can then attack this person with a +5, like maybe to the first attack, for instance, right?
Yeah, that would be better.
That's still worth it. Where it's like, okay, I'll use a bonus action to like dash forward to then get an extra +5 to my first attack. You know what I mean? Like that would still be something that I feel like could, even at higher levels, still be a decent option, like to apply to like a fighter or a barbarian or whatever else. You know what I mean? Like, because then after that, you could then still Great Weapon Master on the second attack, and it's like you might miss, but you could get that 10, that +10. Whereas with this, it's like you have a higher chance to hit, but you only get the +5, which is still great. Plus you also
you get +5 to damage, not to hit.
No, you're right. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. To damage. So it's like half the damage of a Great Weapon Master,
with no drawback.
But with also like with no penalty to get to the thing. So you still would get, like, effectively, that would still be worth it. Plus, you can bonus action dash, which is great. That's always great.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to bonus action dash would be phenomenal, especially for martial classes. So like that, in my opinion, if they had literally made this a bonus action, I feel like that would have changed the entire thing. But because it's an action, it really just screws the whole thing up, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, what are you gonna do next?
Here's a fun one. Crossbow expert.
Oh, I have a lot of feelings about crossbow expert.
Please do tell us, Sammy, because this I also have, like, I admit I'm not a huge crossbow user, and so while I have feelings on it, like I haven't necessarily but anyway, please, like, what how do you feel about crossbow expert?
I like it to a point.
Mm.
There's a lot of back and forth as to how it works. Because technically, if you are using a hand crossbow and shoot it, and you only have the one hand crossbow, you can then shoot it again as a bonus action.
So you could effectively attack at level 5
three times. Now, what I want is to have 2 crossbows
and attack 6 times.
No, it's just the way that crossbow expert works is it's supposed. I think their original intention was to have you have like a rapier or a short sword in one hand and a crossbow in the other.
Have melee and ranged at the yeah.
The problem is that when you dual wield, one of those weapons doesn't get your bonus.
It's true.
So you have to take dual wielder.
Yep.
To make that work.
Yep.
And it's just this weird thing of like, I just want to be the demon slayer from Diablo. Yeah. And shoot a bunch of crossbows. And it works.
The crossbow range is like crossbow shower.
Alone having the loading, ignoring the loading property and the being within 5 feet is good. And then the attack action, I mean, it's helpful, but I feel like what I want out of this is to not have it have disadvantage, or to add the modifier to the damage that dual wielder gives you, because it's annoying to me that I have to take 2 feats just to get my plus to the damage from the crossbow.
Well, fair enough, sure, I guess, but I feel like that's a pretty minor, like,
that's my one gripe.
Overall, towards like, you can literally, again, at level 5 as a ranged like attacker of just whatever, attack 3 times technically.
Unless you're a rogue, which you get 2 attacks, which is huge.
As a rogue, you get 2 attacks, and not just that. Honestly, the biggest thing, in my opinion, with this is being within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your range attack rolls. And now, again, rules as written, it doesn't specifically say you have to use a crossbow.
No, it's all ranged attacks.
It's just any ranged attack,
which is
crazy.
And
you
weird.
Could have a longbow. You could have a freaking rail gun and just like point blank range, just like boom, and it wouldn't matter. Like,
it does bother me that it's only for some reason the hand crossbow. Like, if you're gonna tell me I ignore loading properties, let me use a heavy crossbow.
Yeah. Like,
to me, it's just weird.
Well, it does say crossbow. It doesn't specifically.
No, I'm talking about the extra.
Attack. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's like, because that's the one. Technically, with any other crossbow, you would have to, like, to get a bonus action attack. It's like you're holding that, right? Mm-hmm. So it's literally like, oh, you have this while you're also whatever. But then technically, yeah, you can with this hand crossbow attack 3 times. But I guess because it's like, oh, you ignore the loading property of the crossbows with which you're proficient, so you just go like.
So why can't I just use a heavy crossbow and shoot it twice?
No,
to me, that's the thing that bothers me about crossbow.
You make a decent point with why it's like, if you ignore loading property, and if you can already technically attack twice with a crossbow, like, why can't you just attack 3 times with a bonus action too? I don't know.
That's just.
Well, I guess. I guess because technically speaking, you all, like, for the same reason you can't, like, without maybe like Great Weapon Master, you can't bonus action attack with a 2-handed weapon, right? No 2-handed weapons you can technically, like, then say offhanded attack.
Yeah, true. I
assume it's because literally you can hold that weapon and it's already good to go, and you technically don't have to use both hands to do it.
You're right, but it just annoys me.
No, I agree. Like, there's still a little bit of that personal, like, mental gymnastics to be like, I don't know, that could be. But overall, honestly, I think this feat is great. I love it. Once again, it gives you something that you rarely ever can get, is like no disadvantage on ranged attacks within close range, you know? And that's always been a particular, again, like a topic of debate for people on, like, does it make sense that no matter what, like, if you're within like 5 feet of another person, that it has to be a disadvantage, and not just at them, but at anyone? Like, even if you're not hitting them, if you're just aiming for somebody else, but somebody else within 5 feet, it's like, while it does make sense where it's like this person is maybe like trying to stop you from attacking, and so it's like harder to aim. At the same time, it's like, oh, what if you have like a gun, right? and they're close up, it's like I don't know if it would be disadvantaged because it's like you're closer and you have to be really extra careful and not maybe get blasted. I think maybe it makes more sense for bow and arrows because that might make more sense because it takes much more like
Unless you're Legolas, you can't really just
yeah,
change
exactly.
trajectory.
Legolas, he defies almost every concept of like laws of physics and stuff anyway. So he's definitely an outlier.
Yeah. I mean, if we're gonna talk about something I like that's close by and close to my heart is dual wielder.
Please do.
Master fighting with 2 weapons, you gain the following benefits. You gain a +1 bonus to AC while you're wielding a separate weapon in each hand. Fantastic.
Nice.
You can use 2-weapon fighting even when the one-handed melee weapons you're wielding aren't light, which is great.
Yeah.
And you can draw or stow 2 one-handed weapons when you would normally be able to draw or stow only one. What I like about this is it means I can use a dex-based weapon. Like, you can just use 2 of them.
Yeah.
I can use 2 rapiers if I want to. And it's fun, and it extra AC.
I mean,
and you pair that with the dual...
two long swords with that at this point.
But if you want to be a dex-based character, and you want to get some extra AC, which is nice, and the addition of being able to combine this with the dual weapon fighting style, so you get your pluses on both weapons, and
that's what I would do. I would make
it can lead to some tomfoolery.
Yeah, with dual weapon fighting style, dual wielder feat. And then it would be dope because one thing about D&D too is that like so many of like the cool weapons are like long swords, which is a little
unless you have a cool DM who just transfers that onto smaller weapons.
Yeah. Or like light / finesse weapons. And that's usually I think how most people do it because I feel like that's how you should do it because it is just like but either way, this is definitely a great one. Again, anything that helps increase your AC without having to apply like to your dex, fantastic. Or even just like armor, whatever else, just anything else is great. It's a fun one for sure, man. That also does lead me actually to another thing too that I find a couple of these 3 specific feats I find are particularly interesting, and I feel like it just depends like what character you're building if they're really viable, but I feel like they could have a lot of cool potential but are probably a little underused in my opinion. The Crusher, Slasher, and Piercer feats.
Yeah.
So, specifically, as you guys might be able to surmise, those have to do with the damage types bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing, respectively. And they basically do specific things in regards to those damages. So, for Crusher, you are practicing the art of crushing your enemies, granting you the following benefits. You increase your strength or constitution by 1 to a maximum of 20. Great. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals bludgeoning damage, you can move it 5 feet to an unoccupied space, provided the target is no more than 1 size larger than you. See, now, again, this is the thing that I'm like, this is also one reference that I like in regards to like Sentinel, right? This specifically stipulates you cannot move a target that is more than 1 size larger. I think it's very important because again, it wouldn't make sense. It'd be like kind of like you could maybe make the argument that you're just so strong now you could home run a gargantuan ancient dragon into the stratosphere, I guess. But like this does give that stipulation while also still giving you the ability. Like there's no save for that. Yeah. You just do that. So for instance, if you're fighting an enemy like in a cool area like a volcano, right? Or even just on like a super high, like tall building. You're right next to the edge. You just bludgeoning damage. You move them 5 feet to the right. They fall. And they're going to fall in either the lava from the volcano or they're going to fall to the concrete below, taking all that falling damage like that. There are so few things in the game, once again, that allow you to just move a creature like without them being able to stop it, right? Like you just deal damage to them, plus you can do this thing. And last but not least, it has one more ability. When you score a critical hit that deals bludgeoning damage to a creature, attack rolls against that creature are made with advantage until the start of your next turn. And that's just any creature. So not only do you get advantage, any attacks against that creature are now advantage. So all your friends until the start of your next turn will just start getting free advantage on that creature at that point. It has to be a crit to be fair. But still, like that has such potential. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You do a lot of cool stuff with this feat.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You get into like they're all kind of have a similar build to them. You get into like Piercer, which is you increase your strength or dex to a maximum of 20. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals piercing damage, you can reroll one of the attack's damage dice and use the new roll. And when you score a critical hit that deals piercing damage to a creature, you can roll one additional damage die when determining the extra piercing damage the target takes. It's just extra damage.
Yeah.
If you use one specific type of weapon, these are pretty helpful. I personally, I like these feats a lot,
I
but
feel like
I've never
Piercer,
taken them.
I've taken them for like some of my DMPC like villains. Because I think again, like and honestly, I think Piercer's the worst of all of them. Like Piercer does not really do
It's just
much
extra damage.
like, and not even that, not even great extra damage. Again, it's non-critical ability. The once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack, you can re-roll one of the attack's damage dice, and you have to use a new one. So it's like that's kind of nothing at the end of the day. It's like, yeah, because once again, it's likely you could roll lower, less damage. That's bad in my opinion.
You that's why you have a choice.
Well, but no, it says you have to use the new roll. So you can,
yeah, but you can choose whether or not to make that roll.
true, but my point being is like, what if it's like, for instance, you get like a 3, like what if you like roll like a D8 or a D10, right? Or probably just a D8 for rapier, and you roll like a 4, maybe even a 3, right? You could still roll and get a 2 or a 1, which would then be worse than the damage you literally just dealt. Which in my opinion,
but your
the
odds
one,
are better.
that doesn't make sense to me. I feel it should be a choice. I, as a DM, I'd be like, you can choose which one to use, because it shouldn't be, you shouldn't be able to do less than the damage you literally just did. You know what I mean?
Okay
Like,
with
what
the
is
risk.
that? It's literally like, oh, as your own feat, you're like, I stabbed you this much, but actually, I rewind time so that technically I only stabbed you this much now from my choice. It's like,
I love it.
that doesn't make any goddamn sense. That's ridiculous. And then it's on top of that, it's like, again, you can only roll one of the attack's damage dice. Maybe at least, because again, what is it? What is it? Is it great weapon fighting? I think, where you can reroll like all the damage dice, and then like at the very least, I think technically you do have to take that new
Ones
roll,
and
but at the very least
twos.
you can, yeah.
Ones and
Oh, you
twos
can
you reroll.
ones and twos are okay. That's better in my opinion. Where it's like, okay, you absolutely can roll the, like, because you roll basically almost the worst that you can roll, and you get a chance to then at least make that more. And it's not like, oh,
I mean, I guess if you want to, you can just I
well,
don't know. It's fine. I like the critical ability. When I get to roll more dice, it makes me happy. So
yeah,
anything that lets me roll
with
more
more dice,
dice.
slightly more viable. But even then, it's like
Slasher's
one
good.
additional damage die when determining, like, make it more, like make it like a, because again, even what the barbarians like brutal critical, I think you get like what, 3 extra damage die.
Well, yeah, like level at like a high level. At the beginning, it's just one.
That's what I'm saying. Like make it more as you level up. You know what I
But
mean?
then it's not a feat anymore. It's a subclass ability.
Well, we were talking about that with Poisoner, so why not apply it to
Because
Piercer?
it takes gold and time and resources and research.
But again, why wouldn't you, if you can deal more damage with, like, as you get higher and you increase like your dex or whatever to use it, why can't you deal more damage from,
No, you're right. Yeah.
piercing people?
I want to make a champion fighter that just only uses it uses one of each weapon, and
Right?
you roll a dice every turn.
Get all
To...
through these. But yeah, last but not least, of the 3 of the Trinity is Slasher, and I like Slasher too. I think both Slasher and Crusher are pretty viable at any point in the game, no matter what you take. And this one, obviously, again, once more, you increase your strength or dex by 1, because you've learned what to cut to have the greatest results. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals slashing damage, you can reduce the speed of the target by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. The third one, when you score a critical hit that deals slashing damage to a creature, you grievously wound it until the start of your next turn. The target has disadvantage on all attack rolls. See, once again, like, no matter what level you are, that is
That's
always
handy.
just going to be helpful and great. You're just going to lower target speed by 10. And so again, what I'll tell you is I literally took a fighter, I gave her a warhammer, and then I gave her a longsword, and I gave her both crusher and slasher. And so because she can literally attack like 2 to 4 times, a turn, depending on on her level. It's like she can apply all of these buffs on them at
As
once.
long as you crit.
Not even crit, as long as you hit.
Oh,
hit
you're
a
talking
creature.
about the 10 feet and the other, what's the other one?
Yeah, 10 feet, and the other one is you can move them 5 feet. So you can literally lower their movement by 15 feet, technically, like depending on where they're trying to go.
Yeah.
Like
It's definitely handy.
Literally cripple them. Like you can just cripple them with, and you also as a fighter, if you attack 4 times, or even more so, depending on all of your stuff, you have a high probability of critting, maybe even multiple times, and then you can apply both of these critical effects to them. So now, not only do they have disadvantage until your turn, everybody has advantage against them until your next turn. Phenomenal. No matter what level you are. In fact, no, even because you're the higher you get, it gets better at higher levels. Unlike Piercer, which is kind of just like
you just
meh.
hate Piercer.
It's real meh. It's real like lower meh. Okay, Piercer's really lower meh.
I like Piercer.
Let's see. I think we're probably going to be wrapping up pretty soon here. We'll probably just talk about a couple more of these things. Let's see. What are your thoughts and feelings on the telekinetic and telepathic feats?
I don't like telekinetic. If you want something like this, just play the magic rogue. It doesn't give me enough that I'm like, yeah, this is what I want. The part where, yes, your range increases by 30 feet, great, and you can try to shove a creature. Shoving is not really that effective in most instances of D&D.
I mean, that's it. Like I said, it depends. Because again, like same thing with the Crusher feat. You know what I mean? Like it is, to be fair, it is very situational. In terms of like, where you are at and what's going on. But like, in my opinion, I'm always a DM or GM / player that I'm always about like, let's have cool environmental stuff so that positioning matters more. Because for instance, like and most of the games that I play for like our one of our homebrew rules is like we do allow flanking, but our flanking rules are like if you get like a full true flank, you get a +2 to your attack roll. And then if you have like another friend who's like right here, that's like a +1 flank. So you can add to your chance to hit because you're literally like harrying the dude from like all these different sides. So instead of just being like a flat, 2 people on opposite sides, you get advantage. It's like your position can matter and can actually have more of an effect on the outcome of like an attack, as well as like this also means, you can move a person into position that gives you a little bit. And so like, I like it, like, like you said, the mage hand cantrip, and if you already have it, it's 60 feet, and you can make it invisible. It's like, that's okay. It's not bad. But I feel like the ability to bonus action telekinetically move a person 5 feet toward or away from you, especially for a spellcaster, that could be helpful. You could potentially knock them out or push them away so that you could get out of their attack range for attack opportunity.
True.
I remember like one particular moment, I will say I used this to incredible effect, was literally, it was the beginning of a campaign that me and my friends were playing. And I took this for my my Kalishtar Artificer, which I just felt like it just fit because the whole, psychic kind of aspect of Kalishtar. And I was like, this is a cool little thing that I can use. We were like level 1, and we got into an encounter with a more powerful enemy. But my friend utilized what was it? It was Tasha's Hideous Laughter, I believe. And he failed the save and started laughing. And we were on a boat specifically, like a little long boat. And he was laughing on the ground, prone. And I was just like, I'm going to bonus action telekinetically shove him into the water. And he failed the save, and it's a strength save. And so he fell into the water and just began to drown at level 1. And then subsequent turns, and he couldn't make the save for the laughter. He kept just rolling low. I just kept telekinetically shoving him lower and lower into the water, just slowly drowning him.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to use that.
And so it's like you can find, and so like because of the moments like those, I'm like, I do enjoy it, like, for sure. It definitely is very situational, but I'm like, I find ways to enjoy it. Well, how do you feel about telepathic then?
It leaves me wanting.
Hmm.
I don't like the fact that it's not communication. Like you can't respond back and forth. I understand why.
Yeah,
I would prefer it immensely if I could do that. But the fact that you can just like kind of reach into people's heads and talk to them, and then also you have detect thoughts.
yeah,
I love that flavor. It's something that for me is fun. I like the idea of being able to creep people out.
yeah,
That was what I did with a Great Old One Warlock. Is I would just go into like these small towns, and to distract people, I would just start saying weird cryptic shit into their head, and because they don't know where it's coming from, and they don't have experience with magic,
yeah.
it's terrifying. And you can really role play it up and have fun with it.
It is.
Um,
It can be a lot of fun.
I like it. Um, I wish you could communicate, but I understand why you can't. There's only a couple ways to do that in
It
the
makes sense.
game.
Well, oh, well, that's the thing, right? Like I'll say, like not only does it make sense, but there actually are a lot of other ways to communicate. Like at this point, they've put so many spells in the game, and not even of like super high level. Like even if you just take, for instance, like message, right? A cantrip level
Yeah, but
spell.
this is something that you don't even have to. There's no way to tell you're doing it.
You don't have to cast a spell, and that's the thing, right? It's like message is 120 feet, and you can cast it through a lot of like stuff, not everything, not a lot of materials, but a number of materials.
It's copper wire. You just
And we just have to like, yeah, you just have to point in the direction of the person, even if you can't see them, you just have to point in the direction you know they are. And as long as they're within 100 feet, you whisper a message, and it doesn't have to be like, it's not limited to like a word count like sending is.
no, it's 25 words.
No, it's not.
Message?
No.
I thought
Message
it
is
was.
25 words. It's just you just say a message. Sending is 25 words. Message is not.
Hmm.
And thing being though is it's not technically telepathic. Like it is like you whisper, but no other creature except for you and the creature you're messaging to can hear the whispers back and forth. And so it's like, yeah, that's great, but obviously there are some, restrictions and drawbacks to it. But obviously with this, yeah, you can just telepathically communicate one way. And then after that, once you start getting sending, you can just do it only 25 words, but from anywhere basically in the world or universe even. And then you get various telepathic bond, and then you can do it from anywhere in the world in the same plane of existence for an hour, with like I think what 6 maybe 8 creatures. But there are a lot of ways, and that's why this it's decent enough. You get to tech thoughts, but yeah, I also agree it is a little bit lackluster. But it's a little way of being like, hey, you want to have your maybe a little a special kind of telepathic or psychic aspect to your character without having to be like a psionic rogue or a psionic fighter or whatever. It's like or even like a Kalistar. Like this is a way to do it. And,
Yeah, it's something I've considered taking this feat in my Monday campaign because my warlock was a Great Old One, and I lost my pact and got a new one.
yeah,
And I lost my creepy
your telepathy. Yeah,
yeah, and I kind of want it back, but
yeah,
I don't know. It's entertaining. I like the feat. It's a feat that I'd take, early on if I was if I didn't need to take something that was combat focused.
yeah.
It's at least the flavor of it's nice.
Let's see.
It's entertaining.
It has its place for sure.
I'm sitting here trying to look up if there's weapons like in 5e that allow you to do two types of damage, like slashing and piercing, or slashing or piercing and crushing.
Anything that allows you to deal like slashing, piercing, bludgeoning, like between, I think, except for like ironically,
Great Weapon Master.
polearm master feat.
Or Great Weapon, because you're hitting it with the end of your sword. Oh no, you're not. It's just polearm, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just polearm.
Oh,
Yeah. Polearm is the only one that allows you to technically like hit the other end, and it's considered to be bludgeoning instead of slashing, which is interesting. I wish more things allowed that. Like I wish you could. I mean, I guess technically you could just say that with like a sword and be like, I'm gonna attack non-lethally. I'm gonna hit him with
the flat end,
flat of the
which
blade,
was a real
like
thing,
pommel, and that would be bludgeoning damage. But
I don't know. I'd be like, well, you're not going to do the same dice. I don't know. I'm just looking for some stupid. Like, I wish there was a legendary weapon that like hit, you can pierce, and then I don't know, or like you slam them, and then like fucking spikes come out.
Yeah, no, honestly, I would love it if it was like, oh yeah, you could it was almost like a morph weapon where it's like, oh, you can switch out and change like the nature of it at any time, and it's like it does different damage, and that's how you can maybe get past certain resistances. But I mean, that's also the thing, right? A lot of D&D, they don't like, aside from what, like skeletons and like oozes, like there aren't a lot of monsters that like, oh, they take more damage from bludgeoning, or they take less damage specifically from slashing.
But
Like,
it's always, if you have a magical weapon, you get around that.
well,
Anyway.
even it's not even, well, that's the thing. Those particular ones, I think, is also like they don't. I don't know if it is a caveat with magic, like because it's like,
I know for skeletons it is. It's
is it
like
skeletons?
if you do magic damage, it doesn't matter.
Okay, because
It's weird.
I know for like certain oozes, like if you do like slashing damage, they're like immune to that, and it like even like they can like literally separate in half. I think it's like black oozes that do that, or black pudding. Sorry, black pudding. Spoiler alert. But yeah, there's not a lot of weaponry that allows you to actually interchange different types of like baseline weapon damage.
No, but I mean, there's always creativity to get around that.
Uh,
Oh, I'm trying to think. You know what? For our final, I think we each should pick a feat
yeah.
that we want, like next time we make a character that we want to take, whether that's a combat feat or a flavor feat that we want to take to kind of base a character around. Because I have one.
Like, let me see here. Let's see. Oh God. I have a funny one that would be funny.
Oh no.
It's definitely
I wonder if we're thinking of the same one.
I wonder. But yeah, you know what? I want to talk a bit about it because I think it maybe is an interesting one to maybe have a little bit of a discussion on. You go first.
Do you want? Okay, I was gonna go with chef.
Chef is a great one. That's not the one I was thinking of, but
Okay,
I think it's very similar to Chef, actually.
I want to take chef. I want to do a chef bard, where his art is food.
Nice.
Um, it's a fun one for me. It's not exactly the best, but I do not care.
Nope.
And it is
One of my friends is using this feat in a game we're playing like now.
and it's the increase your constitution or wisdom score by 1. You gain a proficiency with cook's utensils, and as part of a short rest, you can cook special food provided you have ingredients and cook's utensils on hand. You can prepare enough of this food for a number of creatures equal to 4 plus your proficiency bonus. So you're a mini caterer. And at the end of the short rest, any creature who eats the food and spends 1 or more hit die to regain hit points gains an extra 1d8 hit points. Yeah. With 1 hour of work, or when you finish a long rest, you can cook a number of treats equal to your proficiency bonus. These special treats last 8 hours after being made. A creature can use a bonus action to eat one and gain temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. This reminds me of like the inspiring leader feat a little bit.
That's what I was.
The reason I want this is like, just to cook
I was like,
food.
that's not what I wasn't gonna choose chef, but it's very similar to chef. But continue please with what you were saying.
I want to take it and cook like these extravagant gourmet meals on the side of the road, and it'd be fun. I want to be a dwarf and a bard, and I don't play music and I don't write poetry. I write recipes. That's right. Like, it'd be so fun. You can flavor it like being a bartender or just other types of thing. It would just be like, I want to like a dwarf hibachi chef.
That sounds absolutely amazing.
I don't like, it's the dumbest thing and it's so fun. I've never done it, and I think I'm just gonna have to do it now. And I kept seeing it as we were scrolling through these feats, and I'm like, oh, what's chef about? I've looked at it a handful of times. Let me go over this again. And it's fantastic. But that's just me being I need to make weird things happen.
Yeah, I feel that. Like for me personally as well. Like for mine, I chose inspiring leader because I was like, this particular feat is just very interesting in theory, but has ironically a lot of weird kind of debates about it in practice, but also has a lot of cool potential again, role play wise. Specifically, inspiring leader. You do have to have a charisma of 13 or higher, first off, but you can spend 10 minutes inspiring your companions, shoring up their resolve to fight. When you do so, choose up to 6 friendly creatures, which can include yourself, within 30 feet of you who can see or hear you and who can understand you. Each creature can gain temporary hit points equal to your level plus your charisma modifier. A creature cannot gain temporary hit points from this feat again until it has finished a short or long rest. So, this is an interesting feat specifically because, like, I've heard a lot of, like, horror kind of stories behind it in regards to it obviously has a lot to do with your character's, like, you know, charisma. It literally has a prerequisite of 13 or higher. And so, first off, let me ask you, Sam, what do you feel like it would take to, like, really be able to apply this feat? Like, are you one of those guys who believes, like, you know, oh, you have this feat, you can just do it, it just happens? Or are you maybe one of those people who's like, if you're going to use this feat, you got to actually, like, you know, tell me what you're going to say to actually be able to use this feat?
I mean, I'm not gonna require a 10-minute real speech, of course. We have a character in my Tuesday campaign. He is a barbarian. He is the de facto leader of our group, not because he's good at doing anything, but we refer to him as the sexiest dwarf in all of the realms. He's great. His name is Big Weapon. That's his and he just hits things with big weapons, and he also plays music really well.
It's got to be his porn star name. It's got to be.
No, it's his real name.
I'm saying, really, that's got to be his porn star name. Like,
it's fantastic. And so what he took this feat, and none of us knew that he took this feat until one day we were getting ready at the beginning of our day, and he's like, I need all of you to come near. And we were like, okay. Like, it was like right before a fight. Like, we were on our way to a dragon cave.
Bring it in.
Yeah, he's like, bring it in. And he just started talking. We're all looking, like, I knew what it was immediately, but everyone else was like, what the fuck is going on? It was a good, like, minute-long speech.
Yeah.
And we got the temporary hit points. He gave, like, our DM gave him inspiration because it's the first time he used it. So for me, the way I would have it is you have to make an attempt. As a player, I need you to roleplay. If you will not roleplay at the table, don't take this feat from me. I don't like you just describing your speech. Give me at least, like, a good part of it. If you want to go on after that because no one here is a 10-minute public speaker off the top of your dome, that's fine. But give me an attempt to do, like, a decent little speech, a decent little inspiration. And you know what? You don't have to be the most charismatic. Say you are sitting at a 13 and you have an awkward but slightly rousing speech because you're with friends and family.
Very cute, very sweet. The intention is there.
You know, I think back to Keyleth Critical Role 1 campaign, where at the beginning of using it, she was terrible, and by the end, it was a lot better, and I like that. Yeah. But you have to make an attempt. I'm not asking for a 10-minute speech, but if you tell me, oh, I give a rousing 10-minute speech, no, you don't. Let me hear it. I need to hear it. I need to hear it. The same way I would apply to the chef. What did you make? Describe it to me.
No, you didn't.
You know, I need to know. I want something there.
Yeah.
But I think if you're willing to do a little role play, if you don't role play, don't take those feats.
No.
It's my opinion. But between me and you, we role play heavy, so it's not a problem for us.
100% I agree. Like, because like I said, I've heard a number of, like, horror stories about this, where it's like it's gone so far as, like, again, like, it was like one DM or rather one player, like, he didn't want to role play anything, right? He just wanted to be like, can I just do this? Can I just get the thing? I just want the bonus. I just want the bonus hit points because I have the feat. Like, he didn't make any real attempt because he was like, well, I you know, he's shy, or he has a bit of anxiety about, like, you know, talking or speaking or role playing. And how I kind of viewed that, I was like, I get that, and that's understandable. But this, I'd almost be like, I feel like this feat though is maybe a great opportunity to try and help you maybe come out of that shell.
It's a learning moment.
It could be a great learning moment. Yeah, it's not going to be comfortable, but this is a wonderful moment, not even just in the game, but like as a group in real life, to maybe help you to maybe, like, progress and blossom a little bit and grow. Exactly.
It's
because, like you said,
it's so good. flavor wise.
I do not want anybody. Don't take this just because it's like, oh, you can get extra temporary hit points for the thing, and that's all you took. It's like, don't.
If you want that, just take aid.
Yeah, just take tough. Just take tough if you want extra hit points.
Yeah,
like
this is something that you feel like your character works.
Exactly. It is clearly much more flavorful, and why I absolutely agree. I feel like it's stupid that they literally said, "Oh, you have to spend 10 minutes to inspire your like." No one's gonna give like a 10-minute rouse.
No, they only said that because they want it to have to take time. You can't do this in the middle of a fight.
Exactly.
It's something you do at the end of your short rest or at the end of your like long rest when you're eating breakfast before
or even,
a
like,
day.
right before going into a fight. Like you can do it right before going in, and that's why I think
unless you're in a dungeon,
they'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
A minute would still be fine. Even what is it? I think Liamon's tiny hut, like still only it's 10 minutes, or even like I think there's another one that is a minute to cast, where it's like in combat, you're not going to be able to cast that in combat, but you can still cast it like right before, like give them, let's even maybe say like it's because I know it's basically the same amount of time as a ritual. It's a ritual spell basically,
which I like that.
Okay, that's fine, that works. But I'm also like, you know what? You could also just say it's a minute, and I think that would be fine too, because it's at the end of the day, it's still temporary hit points,
which can't stack.
Yeah,
and there's so many sources now.
They can't stack, and even at like your max level, most likely you're only going to get like 25, right? And those are probably at that level, those are going to go away pretty quickly.
But hey, I mean, an extra 10 hit points can mean the difference between life and death. And to me, this and the chef feat with the temp HP and the stuff like that, it's more for flavor, but also it's just another way to support your party.
Absolutely. It's another way to support your party, like as a whole together. And not just that, but it provides great art, like role play opportunities. And ironically, not necessarily just for, again, in game, but also out of game for your players to be more extrovert, to even have maybe that moment. Say it's a player who maybe is a little bit more reserved and shy, doesn't get a lot of spotlight. Having this feat is like, yo, that literally gives them the ability to take the spotlight for a bit and to maybe have that moment to give them the the ball, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's great, and I'd love to have a character around this. Like two ideas came to mind. I'm being like, I'm a traveling grung paladin who's just like
inspiring the masses.
Yeah, I'm a traveling grung paladin who's just like super into just like helping people, and I'm just like rousing. I'm like I come to like a village that's currently being subjugated by like a tyrannical ruler, and I'm just like,
you bring the guards together, like,
raise your swords, your pitchforks, your knives. Let us progress forward to defeat this tyrannical baron. Yeah! Like, he's just super, maybe a little bit overly enthused, and maybe gets people killed sometimes. They're like, oh, what?
You just do like a crown paladin where like your kingdom, you are the kingdom.
Yeah, literally. You're just like, well, I was gonna think in regards to that, I was like, I could also do like, I feel like a tiefling, maybe like sorcerer or warlock, or maybe even like rogue or bard. And he's just a cult con man. He just makes cults. He's just he like goes from cults. So he's like, everybody, I think we did a wonderful time here. I think we did great. It's fantastic. Everybody, you did so well on procuring all this stuff, but unfortunately now, like a real kind of Jack Sparrow-esque kind of person who just does, like, he's very like roguish. He just kind of moves from one place to the next, but he just inspires people to do maybe not great things at times. but like there's so many potential opportunities with this feat.
Yeah, I do love it. I'm looking at, it's just a role play. Like the funny thing is that there's a lot of feats that, yes, they give you raw numbers or things of that nature, but what we look for at the end of it all is role play.
Or and just longevity. I feel, again, this is something that most likely you will be using as a substitute for an ability score improvement, right? Mm-hmm. Ability score improvements, those will always be super applicable, like depending on your class, no matter how, like those will always be applicable in almost everything that you do. And so obviously having something, a feat that you really do also need to be applicable throughout your entire career and campaign of this character.
Yeah.
Like it should be something that you're going to be able to use often and well, and maybe even deliberately, which again, it just makes you feel like, hey, I remember that thing. Cool. I have this thing. And they're just great. You know, and obviously not all of them. There can be plenty that are bad and that just like need.
There's just, I think more it's reworking or underwhelming.
Yeah,
and
agreed. They need a little bit of tweaking. Maybe they need something to be added to it to get that punch, to get that hit. Maybe they need to have some caveats implemented to make them, you know, a little bit better in terms of what they already have. But overall, personally, and even though, like we said at the top of this video, they're technically optional, I, for one, always feel like they should always be optional. Like they should always be available at any and every table. I don't think you should ever like ban feats. I don't think you should ever necessarily ban any feat for that matter. I feel like, you know, like everything else, you just need to have a very frank conversation with your dungeon master or games master and your party to be like, hey, how do you feel about this feat? How are we going to make this feat, you know, viable or better for my character, for the game, and to have more fun, you know, whether it be, again, either depowering it a bit or again, adding some caveats or adding some things to it to make it better.
Yeah.
But overall, I feel like they are a wonderful source, a wonderful tool to make any character / game better.
Yeah. It's especially if you work within the realm of like working as a group and with other people, specifically your DM, to make some of these work a lot better. I enjoy them a lot. But again, they're not optional on my table. Everyone gets them.
Yep, nope, same. Like it's they are always available for anybody like who wants to take them as an ability score improvement. And not just that, most of my games, like we give out feats pretty often. Like everybody feats. We give feats. Yeah, we give out free feats. Because it's like we usually are like, hell, you can get a free feat at level 1, which, you know, obviously we also do say if you take the variant human, you also get that feat too, so you can get 2 free feats at level 1. But it's you know, it just, in my opinion, and usually with the people that I play with, it makes the game more fun and enjoyable to have those.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you know, in essence, that is we, the Arcane Archives, take on
Feats.
Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition Feats, for the most part. Once again, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in and staying with us for this whole time. If you have, we appreciate it so much. And yeah, we'll check you guys again real soon. Thanks so much. See ya.